They said she was just a waitress. They were wrong. One spilled drink, one wrong man, one choice that would rip open a past soaked in blood and betrayal. Lena Cross thought she could disappear into Chicago's shadows until the night she met Marco Vieri, a crime boss who saw through her disguise with one cold glance. What began as survival became a reckoning. Underground rings, brutal tournaments, enemies crawling from the grave, and a woman who stopped running and started hunting. This is her story. If you're still here at the end, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. The Velvet Cage wasn't the kind of place you stumbled into by accident. Tucked between a shuttered pawn shop and a Korean barbecue joint on the south side, the club existed in that gray zone where legality blurred into suggestion. Neon bled through smoke-stained windows. Bass thumped through brick walls thick enough to muffle screams. Inside, the air tasted like expensive whiskey and cheaper decisions. Lena Cross moved through it like a ghost. Tray balanced on one palm, she navigated the crush of bodies with practiced efficiency. 3 years of this. 3 years of keeping her head down, her mouth shut, and her past buried so deep it might as well have been cremated. She wore her uniform like armor, black skirt, white blouse, hair pulled back tight enough to hurt. Plain, forgettable, exactly what she needed to be. Lena, table 7, now! Marco's lieutenant, a brick of a man named Sal, barked from the bar, jabbing a meaty finger toward the VIP section. She didn't respond, just adjusted her grip on the tray and headed that way, weaving past a couple grinding to music they probably couldn't even hear. The VIP section sat elevated, separated from the main floor by velvet ropes and the kind of enforced distance that said you don't belong here louder than any sign. Tonight, it belonged to Marco Vieri. Everyone knew Marco. You didn't work at the Velvet Cage and not know the man who owned it, along with half the underground operations in Chicago. He sat center stage at a horseshoe booth, flanked by men in suits that cost more than Lena made in 6 months. Dark hair swept back, sharp jawline, eyes like polished stone that missed nothing. She'd served him before. Never spoken directly to him, never needed to. Top shelf bourbon, 3 fingers, 1 ice cube, Sal had told her. Don't screw it up. Lena reached the section, keeping her eyes on the tray. One of Marco's men, a younger guy with slicked hair and too much cologne, waved her over with the kind of entitlement that made her teeth clench. About time, he muttered. She set down the bourbon with care, fingers steady despite the chaos around her. The glass caught the low amber light, liquid gold over a single perfect sphere of ice. She was already turning to leave when Cologne Guy shifted in his seat, laughing at something one of the others said. His elbow caught her hip. The tray tilted. For one breathless second, Lena saw it happening in slow motion, the bourbon tipping, the glass sliding, amber liquid arcing through the smoky air like a toxic rainbow. She lunged, trying to catch it, but physics was a merciless bitch. The bourbon hit Marco Vieri square in the chest. The entire section went silent. Not just their table, the whole damn VIP area. Even the music seemed to dip, as if the DJ sensed the shift in atmospheric pressure. Lena stood frozen, tray clutched in white-knuckled hands, watching $200 worth of whiskey soak into a suit that probably cost 10 grand. Marco looked down at his chest, then up at her. His expression didn't change. That was somehow worse than rage. Lena's voice came out steadier than she felt. I apologize. I'll get you another drink immediately. You'll do more than that. Sal appeared beside her like a malevolent shadow, fingers digging into her shoulder hard enough to bruise. You got any idea what you just... Sal. Marco's voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of quiet that made smart people stop talking. Let her go. Sal released her instantly, stepping back. Marco stood, peeling off his jacket with methodical calm. Beneath it, his white dress shirt clung to his chest, transparent with alcohol. He handed the jacket to Cologne Guy without looking at him, then turned his full attention to Lena. She should have looked away, should have dropped her gaze like every survival instinct screamed at her to do, but something stubborn, something old and dangerous that she'd buried 3 years ago, kept her eyes locked on his. What's your name? Marco asked. Lena? Lena what? Cross. He nodded slowly, like he was filing that information away somewhere dark and permanent. How long have you worked here, Lena Cross? 3 years. 3 years. He repeated it like he was tasting the words. And in 3 years, has anyone ever told you what happens when you disrespect me in my own club? It was an accident. I didn't ask if it was an accident. I asked if anyone told you what happens. The men around the table shifted, watching, waiting. This was entertainment for them, watching the boss handle some clumsy waitress who'd just made a very expensive mistake. Lena's fingers tightened on the tray. No, no one told me. Then let me educate you. Marco stepped closer, not threatening exactly, but deliberate, each movement calculated. When someone disrespects me, accidentally or otherwise, I have options. I can be generous. I can be understanding. Or, he paused, head tilting slightly. I can be creative. I'll pay for the suit, Lena said, and the bourbon, however long it takes. You think I care about the money? Then what do you want? The question hung between them, sharp as a blade. Marco studied her with an intensity that felt invasive, like he was peeling back layers she'd spent years building. His gaze dropped to her hands, still gripping the tray, then traveled up to her shoulders, her stance, the way she held herself. Something shifted in his expression. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition. You stand like a fighter, he said quietly. Every cell in Lena's body went cold. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Marco circled her slowly, a predator assessing prey. The weight distribution, the way you shifted when Sal grabbed you, not panicking, calculating, and your eyes. He stopped directly in front of her. Your eyes don't match your uniform. You're mistaken. Am I? Silence stretched. In the background, someone coughed. The music kept thumping, oblivious. Here's what's going to happen, Marco said. You're going to meet me downstairs in 20 minutes. There's a space beneath this club, private, soundproof. You're going to step into a ring with me for 1 round, just 1. If you survive without running, without crying, without begging, we'll call your debt paid. Lena's pulse hammered. And if I refuse, then you'll discover exactly how creative I can be. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. And trust me, Lena Cross, you don't want that. What? The basement beneath the velvet cage was everything the club above pretended not to be. Raw, brutal, honest. Exposed pipes ran along a ceiling so low Lena could touch it if she reached up. The floor was concrete, stained with things she didn't want to identify. In the center sat a makeshift boxing ring, ropes frayed, canvas torn in places, blood spatter dried to rust in the corners. This was where Marco's real business happened. Lena stood at the edge of the ring, still in her uniform, pulse steady despite the situation. Around her a crowd had gathered. Word traveled fast in Marco's world. 30, maybe 40 people lined the walls, soldiers, enforcers, hangers-on, who fed off violence like parasites. They wanted a show. Marco stood in the opposite corner, shirtless now, hands wrapped in black tape. His torso was a canvas of old scars and hard muscle, the body of someone who'd survived things that should have killed him. He rolled his shoulders, watching her with that same unsettling focus. You can still walk away, he called across the ring. Just say the word. Lena kicked off her shoes, reached back and pulled the tie from her hair, letting it fall loose around her shoulders. Then, with deliberate slowness, she stepped between the ropes. The crowd murmured. She crossed to the opposite corner, feeling every eye on her. Someone offered her hand wraps, one of Marco's men, grinning like this was all a joke. She took them without a word, binding her hands with muscle memory that felt like coming home. 3 years. 3 years of staying invisible, staying small, staying safe. That was about to end. Rules are simple, Marco said, moving to the center of the ring. 1 round, 3 minutes. No biting, no eye gouging, no groin shots. Everything else is fair game. You last the round, you walk out of here free. You quit early. He shrugged. Well, we'll figure that out. Lena met him in the center. This close, she could see the faint scars on his knuckles, the way his breathing stayed controlled despite the anticipation radiating off him. Last chance, he murmured, quiet enough that only she could hear. Who are you really? No one important. Liar. A bell rang. Someone with a piece of metal and a mallet, the sound echoing off concrete walls. Marco came at her fast. Not testing, not playing. Full aggression from the first second, closing the distance with a jab-cross combination that would have dropped most people before they processed what was happening. But Lena wasn't most people. She slipped left, letting the jab cut through empty air where her face had been a heartbeat earlier. The cross came harder, faster, and she swayed back just enough to feel the displacement of air against her cheek. Then she was inside his guard, too close for him to generate power, and her body moved on instinct older than thought. Elbow to his ribs, short, vicious, perfectly placed. Marco grunted, stumbling back. The crowd went silent. Lena didn't press the advantage. Just reset her stance, hands up, eyes locked on him, waiting. Marco's expression changed. The curiosity sharpened into something hungrier. He rolled his shoulder where her elbow had connected, then smiled. A real smile this time, edged with something almost like joy. "There you are," he said. He came again, faster, harder, a faint high followed by a body shot low trying to break her guard. But Lena read it like sheet music, pivoting off the center line and countering with a hook that snapped his head sideways. Not enough to drop him, enough to make him respect her. The fight evolved. They circled each other, trading combinations that would have hospitalized amateurs. Marco fought like a brawler with discipline, raw power channeled through technique. Lena fought like water, flowing, adapting, finding gaps in his defense, and exploiting them with surgical precision. 30 seconds in, she tagged him with a straight right that bloodied his lip. 45 seconds in, he caught her with an uppercut that lifted her off her feet. She hit the canvas hard, ears ringing, tasting copper. The crowd roared, finally getting the violence they'd come for. Marco stood over her, breathing hard, blood on his chin. "Stay down," he said, not mocking, almost concerned. Lena spat blood and pushed herself up. The round continued. She abandoned defense almost entirely, trading pain for position. Every shot she took, she gave back twice as hard. A knee to his thigh that made him limp, an elbow that opened a cut over his eye, a liver shot that doubled him over long enough for her to sink a rear-naked choke that should have ended it. But Marco was stronger. He powered out, reversed position, and slammed her into the corner post hard enough to crack ribs. Lena's vision blurred. She couldn't breathe right. Something was broken or badly bruised, every inhale a knife in her side. Blood ran from her nose, her mouth, a cut above her eyebrow she didn't remember receiving. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Marco grabbed her by the throat, not choking, controlling, and pulled her close. His face was a mess, eye swelling shut, lip split, blood running from his nose and the cut on his brow. "You're not a waitress," he rasped. "No," Lena admitted. "I'm not." "Who are you?" The bell rang. Time. Marco released her, stepping back. The crowd erupted, cheering, cursing, money changing hands as bets were settled. But Lena only had eyes for the man in front of her, watching her like he'd just discovered something rare and dangerous. She wiped blood from her mouth. "I lasted the round." "You did more than last." Marco accepted a towel from someone, pressing it to his eye. "You're free to go, Lena Cross. Debt paid." He turned to leave the ring. Lena should have felt relief. Should have taken the escape and run. Instead, standing there with broken ribs and blood in her eyes, she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Alive. "My real name," she said, voice carrying across the suddenly quiet basement, "is Lena Knockeko. Knockout Cross. 3 years ago, I was ranked number 2 in the underground circuit, undefeated in 27 fights. I walked away after..." She paused. "After things went bad. I've been hiding ever since." Marco stopped, slowly turned back to face her. "Why tell me this?" "Because you already know I'm lying about something. Better you hear it from me than find out on your own." "And what makes you think I won't use that information?" Lena met his eyes. "Because if you wanted to hurt me, you would have done it already. You don't fight like someone who enjoys causing pain. You fight like someone testing a theory." "What theory?" "That I'm more useful to you as something other than a waitress." Silence. Then Marco laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "Get cleaned up," he said. "We're going to talk." The office above the club was a study in controlled chaos. Papers stacked on an antique desk. Maps of Chicago pinned to one wall, marked with territories and boundaries known only to people who operated outside the law. A leather couch that had seen better days. Windows overlooking the street, one-way glass that let Marco see out without anyone seeing in. Lena sat on the couch, a bag of ice pressed to her ribs, while a woman named Rosa, Marco's personal medic apparently, examined the damage. Cracked, not broken, Rosa announced, prodding Lena's side with professional detachment. You'll live. Try not to get hit there again for a few weeks. I'll keep that in mind. Rosa packed up her kit, glanced at Marco, then left without another word. Marco stood by the window, cleaned up now, a butterfly bandage over his eyebrow cut. He'd changed into a fresh shirt, black like his mood. When he finally spoke, he didn't bother with pleasantries. Lena Knockout Cross, undefeated underground fighter, disappeared 3 years ago after a fight in Detroit went sideways. Rumor was you killed someone in the ring, some connected guy's nephew. Bounty went up. You vanished. He turned from the window. That about right? Lena's fingers tightened on the ice bag. Close enough. Which part did I get wrong? I didn't kill him. He had a brain aneurysm mid-fight. Doctor said it could have happened any time, gym, street, in his sleep. But his uncle didn't care about medical facts. He wanted blood. So I ran. And became a waitress? Better than dead. Marco crossed to his desk, pulling out a bottle of bourbon, different from what she'd spilled, she noted, and poured 2 glasses. He offered her one. She took it, sipped, felt the burn settle into her bruises. Here's what I don't understand, Marco said, leaning against his desk. You're good, really good. Good enough that you should be making millions fighting legally. Instead, you're slinging drinks and hiding from a has-been crime lord over an accident. His name is Victor Kozlov, and he's not a has-been. He's very much active and very much wants me dead. Kozlov. Marco's expression darkened. Russian mob, old school, connected to half the underground gambling operations from here to New York. That's the one. And you've been hiding from him for 3 years. Successfully, until tonight. Marco drained his bourbon, set the glass down with a decisive click. I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. There's a tournament, invitation only, underground, happens once every 5 years, fighters from all over the world. No weight classes, no rules, no refs, just survival. Prize is $5 million and enough reputation to write your own ticket anywhere you want. Lena's pulse quickened. I've heard of it, the gauntlet. Every fighter dreams about getting invited. No one I know has ever made it past the second round. I own a stake in it, which means I can enter fighters. Marco's eyes glinted. I want you. Why me? Because I just went 3 minutes with you and you broke my rib, split my lip, and made me work harder than I have in 5 years. Because you're a ghost with nothing to lose and everything to prove. And because... He paused. Because I'm bored, Lena. Bored of crushing people who don't fight back. Bored of winning games that don't matter. You're interesting. And I want to see what happens when you stop hiding and start fighting again. And if I say no, then you go back to your apartment, back to your invisible life, and hope Victor never hears about what happened tonight. Marco's smile was sharp. But we both know he will. Word travels. Someone in that crowd tonight will talk. Give it a week, maybe 2, and you'll have a target on your back again. He was right. Lena knew it in her bones. The moment she stepped into that ring, she'd painted a bullseye on herself. What do you get out of this? She asked. If you win, half the prize money and the satisfaction of proving I was right about you. If you lose, he shrugged, then I was wrong. And I'll make sure you get a decent burial. Comforting. I'm not in the comfort business. Lena stared into her bourbon, watching the liquid catch the light. 3 years of running. 3 years of being small, quiet, invisible. And in one night, it had all unraveled. She could run again, change cities, change names, change everything. Spend another 3 years looking over her shoulder. Or she could fight. If I do this, she said slowly, I have conditions. Name them. 1. You keep Victor off my back until after the tournament. I don't care how, bribe him, threaten him, whatever. But he doesn't touch me until this is done. Done. 2. I train on my terms. You don't own me. We're partners in this, not employer and employee. Agreed. 3. If I win, you use your connections to make Victor's bounty disappear permanently. I want my life back. Marco considered this, head tilted. That's not a small ask. I'm not a small fighter, he laughed. No, you're not. He pushed off the desk, extending a hand. Deal, but I have one condition of my own. Lena eyed his hand warily. What? You fight like you did tonight. No holding back. No playing it safe. The woman who stepped into that ring downstairs, that's who I need in the gauntlet. Not the waitress, not the ghost, the fighter. Lena stood, ribs screaming, and shook his hand. His grip was firm, knuckles scarred, palm calloused from violence. You'll get her, Lena promised. Good. Marco released her hand. Training starts tomorrow, 6 a.m. Warehouse on the east side. I'll text you the address. Don't be late. I won't. She turned to leave, made it to the door before his voice stopped her. Lena? She looked back. Marco stood silhouetted against the window. Chicago spread out behind him like a kingdom built on blood and compromise. Welcome back to the world, he said. Lena's apartment was exactly what you'd expect from someone trying not to exist. 4th floor walk-up in a building that should have been condemned 10 years ago. One room, barely large enough for a bed, a hot plate, and a bathroom with plumbing that groaned like it was in pain. No photos, no personal items, nothing that couldn't be abandoned in 60 seconds. She locked the door behind her, 3 deadbolts and a chain, then collapsed on the bed, still in her blood-stained uniform. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Warehouse address, 2847 Industrial Drive, East Side, 6 a.m. sharp. Bring your anger. Lena stared at the message for a long time. Then she opened her closet, pushed aside the sad collection of waitress uniforms, and pulled out a duffel bag from the back corner. Inside, hand wraps, worn smooth from use, mouthguard, molded to teeth that had taken too many hits, a pair of gloves, leather cracked with age but still functional, and at the bottom, wrapped in an old t-shirt, a photograph. Lena pulled it out with shaking hands. The photo showed a younger version of herself, 22, maybe 23, standing in a ring with her arm raised in victory, sweat-soaked, grinning, alive in a way that the woman in the mirror barely recognized anymore. Beside her in the photo stood a man, older, gray-haired, with kind eyes, and a coach's whistle around his neck. Tommy Reeves, her trainer, her mentor, the closest thing to family she'd ever had. Dead now. 3 years in the ground, collateral damage when Victor's people came looking for her. They'd burned down Tommy's gym with him inside, sending a message that no one who helped Lena cross would survive. That was the real reason she ran. Not fear for herself, fear that everyone she touched would burn. Lena traced her fingers over Tommy's face in the photo. I'm fighting again, she whispered to the empty room. I don't know if that makes me strong or stupid, but I'm tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. So if you're up there somewhere, her voice cracked, I could really use your corner. The apartment didn't answer. It never did. Lena set the photo on the nightstand, the first personal item she'd displayed in 3 years. Then she lay back on the bed, staring at water stains on the ceiling, and tried to convince herself she was making the right choice. Sleep didn't come easy. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the ring, felt the impact, heard the crowd screaming for blood. But underneath the fear, buried beneath 3 years of rust and regret, something else stirred. Hunger. Not for violence, for purpose. For the chance to be something other than a ghost haunting her own life. When her alarm went off at 5 a.m., Lena was already awake. She dressed in layers, sports bra, tank top, hoodie, leggings, and running shoes that had maybe 20 miles left in them, grabbed the duffel bag, checked the locks one final time. Then she stepped out into Chicago's pre-dawn darkness and started walking. The warehouse was 40 minutes on foot. She could have taken a bus, called a cab, asked Marco to send someone. But she needed the walk, needed time to transition from Lena the waitress to Lena the fighter. The streets were quiet this early. Delivery trucks rumbling past, a few joggers in reflective gear, homeless encampments stirring to life under highway overpasses. Chicago waking up to another day of survival. Lena walked through it like a stranger in her own city, realizing how much she'd isolated herself. No friends, no connections, just work, home, and the careful maintenance of invisibility. That ended today. The warehouse sat at the dead end of Industrial Drive, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Graffiti covered every available surface: tags, murals, territorial markings from gangs that claimed this part of the city. A black SUV was parked out front. Two men in suits stood beside it, breath misting in the cold. They straightened when they saw Lena approaching. "You're early," one of them said. Not hostile, just stating fact. "So are you." "Boss is inside, told us to watch for you." He opened the gate, waved her through. "Straight back, can't miss it." Lena nodded, shouldered her bag, and entered. The warehouse interior was cavernous, empty except for a regulation boxing ring in the center, surrounded by heavy bags, speed bags, a weight station that looked like it could rebuild entire humans. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh white. Marco stood in the ring, wearing gym clothes that somehow still looked expensive. He was working a heavy bag, each punch clean and measured, the bag barely swinging despite the force behind the blows. He stopped when he saw her. "You came." "You doubted?" "Honestly, a little." He grabbed a towel, wiped sweat from his face. Most people would have run, taken their chances with Victor rather than step into this willingly. "I'm not most people." "No." Marco's expression was unreadable. "You're really not." Lena dropped her bag, climbed through the ropes. The canvas felt familiar under her feet, home in a way her apartment never had. "Before we start," Marco said, "I need to know something. What do you want out of this? Really, not the surface answer, the truth." Lena considered lying, considered giving him something easy and digestible, but something about the way he asked, direct without judgment, made her answer honestly. "I want to stop being afraid," she said. "I want to walk down a street without checking over my shoulder. I want to say my real name without wondering if it'll get someone killed. I want—" She paused. "I want to prove that the last 3 years weren't a waste, that I can still be who I was before everything went to shit." Marco nodded slowly. "That's good. Hold on to that." He moved to the center of the ring. "Now show me what you've got. No holding back. I need to see what 3 years of rust looks like." They started slow. Jab, jab, cross combinations. Basic footwork. Slipping punches. The fundamentals that every fighter learned before they learned to be dangerous. Lena was rusty. Her timing was off. Her rhythm inconsistent. 3 years of carrying drink trays had dulled the muscle memory that used to be instinctive. But it came back. Slowly. Painfully. Like thawing frozen limbs. Marco pushed harder. Faster combinations. Body shots mixed with headhunting, forcing her to adapt, to think, to react instead of overthink. An hour in, Lena's lungs burned and her ribs screamed where they'd cracked the night before. But she kept moving, kept fighting. "Better," Marco said, circling her. "You're thinking too much. Stop trying to remember and just do." "Easy for you to say." "Nothing about this is easy. That's the point." He came at her hard, a blitz designed to overwhelm. Lena's guard came up instinctively, but he went under it, body shot that folded her. She gasped, dropping to one knee. "Get up." She got up. He hit her again, head shot this time, snapping her face sideways. Stars bloomed in her vision. "Get up." She got up. Again and again, Marco knocked her down. And again, Lena rose, until something broke inside her, not her body, but whatever mental barrier had kept her restrained. The next time he came at her, she didn't defend. She attacked. A straight right that caught him clean on the jaw, a left hook to the body, a knee when he doubled over. Then she was on him, combinations flowing like water, each strike placed with the precision of someone who'd spent years learning exactly where to hurt people. Marco covered up, absorbing the punishment, and when she finally stepped back, gasping, shaking, alive, he was smiling. "There she is," he said, blood on his teeth. "There's the fighter." Training became Lena's religion. 6 days a week, she arrived at the warehouse before dawn and left after dark. Marco worked her harder than anyone ever had, harder than Tommy, harder than any coach she'd known in the underground circuit. He was relentless, methodical, and utterly without mercy. You don't get to coast on talent anymore, he told her during week 2, after she'd complained about running stadium stairs for the 3rd time that day. Talent got you to number 2. It didn't get you to number 1. You know why? Lena spat water into a bucket, legs trembling. Enlighten me. Because when it mattered, when you faced real danger, you ran. Talent doesn't mean shit if you can't back it up when the pressure's on. The words hit harder than any punch. Lena wanted to argue, to defend herself, but the truth was a blade that cut clean. She had run, and it had cost her everything. So what do I need? She asked quietly. Something stronger than talent. Marco tossed her a towel. You need to be inevitable. When you step in that ring, your opponent needs to know, not think, know, that they've already lost. That's not about skill. That's about will. And right now, yours is broken. Then fix it. I can't fix it. Only you can. He gestured to the stairs. Now run it again. She ran. By week 3, her body had transformed. The softness that 3 years of waitressing had allowed crept back into hardness. Muscles rediscovered their purpose. Her cardio improved. The weight she'd lost came back as lean, functional strength. But the physical changes were nothing compared to what was happening inside her head. Marco didn't just train her body. He dissected her psychology with surgical precision, identifying every fear, every hesitation, every moment where she pulled back instead of committing. You telegraph your right hook, he said during sparring one morning. Your shoulder drops half a second before you throw. Anyone with decent eyes will read it and counter. I've thrown that hook 1,000 times. No one's ever complained before. Because you are fighting amateurs. You think the people in the gauntlet are amateurs? He demonstrated, mimicking her shoulder drop. Fix it or lose with it. Your choice. She fixed it. Every flaw he identified, she corrected. Every weakness he exposed, she reinforced. It was brutal, exhausting work, the kind that broke most people. But Lena wasn't most people. She was a woman with 3 years of anger to burn. One morning, a new face appeared at the warehouse. Lena was working the heavy bag when she noticed him, a man in his 50s, barrel-chested, with hands like cinder blocks, and a face that looked like it had been used as a wrecking ball. He stood at ringside, watching her with the critical eye of someone who'd seen 10,000 fighters and knew exactly which ones were serious. That's Dom, Marco said, appearing beside her. Best cut man in the business. Used to work the pro circuit before he decided legal boxing was too boring. Cut man? Lena wiped sweat from her face. I'm not planning on bleeding that much. Everyone plans that. Everyone bleeds anyway. Marco waved Dom over. Dom's going to be in your corner during the gauntlet. When, not if, when you get hurt, he'll be the one keeping you functional. Dom approached with the slow confidence of a man who'd seen everything twice. He looked Lena up and down, not lecherous, just assessing. She's smaller than I expected, he rumbled, voice like gravel in a cement mixer. Size doesn't matter in the gauntlet, Marco replied. Survival does. Survival requires not dying from blood loss. Dom pulled out a worn leather bag, opened it to reveal an arsenal of medical supplies. Let me see your face. Lena tilted her head up. Dom studied her bone structure with professional detachment, fingers tracing her cheekbones, brow ridge, jaw. Good foundation, he muttered. Bones are dense. You cut easy? Not particularly. We'll see. He released her, snapped his bag shut. I'll be at every training session from here on. Need to learn how you react to damage. Everyone's different. Some people swell, some people bleed. Some people's bodies just quit when the pain gets bad enough. I don't quit. Dom's expression didn't change. Everyone quits eventually. Question is whether you quit before or after you've won. He turned to Marco. She's got heart. I can see it. But heart doesn't stop a severed artery. Then teach her how to stop one herself. Over the following weeks, Dom became a constant presence. He taught Lena things no fighter's manual covered. How to breathe through a broken nose. How to see through blood in your eyes. How to keep fighting when your body screamed for you to stop. He was clinical, efficient, and utterly without sympathy. Pain is information, he told her while cleaning a gash above her eye that Marco had opened during sparring. Your body's telling you something's wrong. Most people panic. You need to categorize. Is this pain that means I'm damaged but functional, or pain that means I'm about to die? Learn the difference. How do I learn that? By getting hurt a lot. He wasn't wrong. Marco increased the intensity, bringing in sparring partners from across Chicago's underground scene, strikers, grapplers, brawlers, each one with their own style, their own tricks. Some Lena beat easily, others beat her bloody. There was a woman named Kayla, 6 feet tall and built like a Norse goddess, who specialized in Muay Thai. She kicked with enough force to crack ribs. Lena learned to check kicks, to angle out, to survive against someone who had every physical advantage. There was a man named Jerome, a wrestler who could take you down and grind you into nothing with pressure and positioning. Lena learned to sprawl, to frame, to create space where none existed. There was a kid, couldn't have been more than 20, named Marcus, who fought with the reckless aggression of someone with nothing to lose. Lena learned that sometimes the most dangerous opponent wasn't the skilled one. It was the one who didn't care if they got hurt. Each sparring session was a lesson written in bruises and split skin. Dom cataloged every injury, learning her patterns, teaching her how to manage damage in real time. You favor your left side when your ribs are hurt, he observed one evening while taping her up. Means your right becomes predictable. Opponents will target it. You need to train yourself to move symmetrically even when it hurts. That's not exactly easy. Nothing worth doing is. Between the physical training and the psychological warfare Marco waged on her mental barriers, Lena felt herself changing. Not just getting stronger, becoming different. The woman who'd hidden for 3 years was dissolving, replaced by something harder, sharper, more dangerous. It scared her sometimes, in the quiet hours after training when she was alone in her apartment. She'd look in the mirror and barely recognize the face staring back. Leaner, meaner. Eyes that had seen too much violence to ever be soft again. But there was no going back. The path only led forward. 1 month into training, Marco called a break. We need to talk about Victor, he said, sitting across from her in his office. It was late, well past midnight. The club above them thumped with music and chaos. Down here it was almost peaceful. Lena tensed. What about him? He knows you're training. Word got out. How? Does it matter? Marco leaned back in his chair. Someone in that basement the night we fought recognized you. Talked to someone who talked to someone. That's how this world works. Information is currency. Lena's hands clenched. So he's coming for me. Not yet. I put pressure in the right places, called in favors, made it clear that touching you before the gauntlet would be, unwise. But after? Marco's expression darkened. After, all bets are off. Which means you need to win. Not just survive, win. Because if you don't, Victor will be waiting, and my protection ends the moment that tournament is over. Understood. Do you? Marco stood, moved to the window overlooking the street. Because I need you to understand what winning actually means. The gauntlet isn't a tournament where you collect a trophy and go home. It's a blood sport. People die. Not occasionally, frequently. Last time it ran, only 3 fighters out of 32 made it to the final rounds intact. The rest were carried out in bags or left to rot in the ring. Lena swallowed hard. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to prepare you. He turned to face her. If you step into that tournament, you're stepping into hell, and the only way out is through. So I need to know, right now, before we go any further, are you ready to kill someone if that's what it takes to survive? The question hung in the air like smoke. Lena thought about Tommy, about the gym burning, about 3 years of hiding, 3 years of fear, 3 years of being less than she was, because violence had consequences that echoed. I don't want to kill anyone, she said slowly. But if it's them or me? She met Marco's eyes. Then it's going to be them. Marco studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Good, because hesitation in that ring is suicide. He pulled a folder from his desk drawer, slid it across to her. Inside were dossiers, profiles of fighters, some with photos, others just names and statistics. Records of brutality written in clinical language. These are some of the confirmed entrants, Marco explained. Study them. Learn their styles, their patterns. The more you know going in, the better your chances. Lena flipped through the pages. Each profile was a nightmare in human form. There was a man named Sergei Volkov, Russian, former Spetsnaz, with a record of 14 kills in underground fights across Eastern Europe. His specialty was breaking joints, systematically dismantling opponents until they couldn't continue. There was a woman named Jade Chen, Chinese, trained in sanda and weapons combat, known for her ability to adapt mid-fight and exploit psychological weaknesses. She'd allegedly driven 3 opponents to forfeit just through mind games. There was a Brazilian named Carlos Mendes, a ground specialist who'd put 9 people in comas through submission holds that cut off blood to the brain. He never choked people unconscious. He choked them until they seized. The list went on. Each name was a horror story. Each fighter was a reminder that Lena was stepping into a world where mercy was a liability and compassion got you killed. Jesus, she whispered, closing the folder. They're the best at what they do, Marco said. Just like you used to be. Question is, can you be that again? Lena looked at the folder, then at Marco. Guess we'll find out. Training intensified after that conversation. Marco stopped pulling punches, literally and figuratively. He brought in fighters who matched the profiles in the dossier. Grapplers like Carlos, strategic minds like Jade, brutal strikers like Sergey. Lena lost more than she won, but every loss was a lesson. Every beating was education paid in blood. She learned to survive against opponents who were bigger, stronger, more experienced. Learned to find weaknesses in seemingly invincible styles. Learned that what mattered more than skill when both fighters were broken and bleeding, and the only difference was who wanted it more. Dom worked miracles, keeping her functional. Ice baths at 3 a.m. Supplements that tasted like industrial waste but rebuilt muscle faster. Sleep schedules optimized for recovery. He treated her body like a machine that needed constant maintenance, and somehow, impossibly, it worked. 6 weeks in, Lena sparred with Kayla again, the Muay Thai specialist who'd beaten her bloody the first time. This time was different. Lena had studied her patterns, learned the rhythm of her kicks, identified the micro-adjustments that telegraphed each technique. The fight lasted 2 rounds. In the second, Lena caught a kick, swept the standing leg, and finished with ground and pound that forced Kayla to tap out. Marco watched from ringside, saying nothing. But when Lena climbed out of the ring, he handed her a water bottle with something that might have been pride in his eyes. "You're ready," he said simply. "For the gauntlet?" "For the first round, which is all that matters right now." 1 week before the tournament, Marco changed the training completely. No more sparring, no more conditioning, just rest, recovery, and mental preparation. "Your body's as ready as it's going to be," he explained. "Now we focus on your head, because that's where fights are won or lost." They spent hours watching footage of previous gauntlets, grainy videos of underground fights that looked like they'd been filmed in dungeons. The brutality was shocking, even to someone who'd spent years in the underground scene. No rounds, no breaks, no mercy. Fighters went until someone couldn't continue. Lena watched a man named Victor, not her Victor, someone else, get his arm snapped in 3 places and continue fighting for another 2 minutes before blood loss forced him to collapse. She watched a woman gouge out an opponent's eye with her thumb, matter of fact, like it was just another technique. She watched people die, really die, while crowds screamed for more. "This is what you're walking into," Marco said quietly. "Still sure?" Lena didn't look away from the screen. "Yes." "Why?" "Because the alternative is hiding forever, and I'm done hiding." The night before the tournament, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay in her apartment, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of what was coming pressed down like a physical thing. Tomorrow, she would step into hell. Tomorrow, she might die. Her phone buzzed. "Marco. Can't sleep either. Meet me at the warehouse." 20 minutes later, they sat in the empty ring together, the warehouse dark except for a single overhead light. "I've been thinking," Marco said, "about why I'm doing this. Entering you in the gauntlet. Having second thoughts? No, just examining my motivations." He looked at his hands, scarred knuckles catching the light. "I told you I was bored. That's true. But it's more than that. I've built an empire on violence and fear. I'm good at it, successful. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what it feels like to actually care about something. To invest in someone else's success, not because it profits me, but because..." He trailed off. "Because what?" "Because I want to see you win." He looked at her directly. "Not for the money, Not for the reputation. I want to see you take back what was stolen from you. Does that make sense? Lena felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction exactly, but recognition. Two broken people finding something like purpose in each other's survival. Yeah, she said softly. It makes sense. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, two fighters on the eve of battle, each carrying their own ghosts. Tell me about Tommy, Marco said eventually. Your old trainer. What was he like? Lena smiled despite herself. He was patient, which is miracle given what an angry kid I was when I started. 17, chip on my shoulder the size of a building, convinced the world owed me something. He saw through all that bullshit, taught me that anger's a tool, not a lifestyle, that discipline beats rage every single time. He sounds like a good man. He was the best man I ever knew, and they killed him because of me. That wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? Lena's voice hardened. I brought violence to his door. I made him a target. If I'd never started fighting, never gotten involved with that world, he'd still be alive. Or maybe he'd have died another way. Old age, car accident, heart attack. Marco shrugged. We don't get to control how people die, Lena. Only how we live with it afterward. And how do you live with it? By making their deaths mean something, by not wasting the time they bought you with their sacrifice. He stood, offered her a hand. Tommy died protecting you. Don't dishonor that by losing tomorrow. Win, survive, live the life he wanted you to have. Lena took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. What if I'm not strong enough? You are. I've watched you for 2 months. I've seen you break and rebuild yourself a dozen times. You're the strongest person I know. He released her hand. Now go home. Get whatever sleep you can. Tomorrow, we make history. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the confidence he projected. But standing there in the empty warehouse, with dawn just hours away and her future a question written in blood, all she felt was afraid. Not of the pain, not even of dying, afraid of failing, of proving that 3 years of hiding had broken something essential inside her, that the fighter she used to be was gone forever. Hey, Marco's voice cut through her spiral. You're going to be fine. Trust me. Why should I? He smiled. Because I never bet on losing horses, and I've bet everything on you. The gauntlet was held in a place that existed in the gaps between Chicago's legal infrastructure. An abandoned factory on the south side, surrounded by industrial wasteland and urban decay. The kind of place the city had forgotten, perfect for activities that needed to stay invisible. Outside, it looked dead. Inside, it was very much alive. Lena arrived in an SUV with Marco, Dom, and 2 of Marco's security detail. The sun had set an hour ago, leaving Chicago's skyline glittering in the distance like a promise of civilization that didn't reach this far. Stay close, Marco murmured as they exited the vehicle. There are people here who'd kill you for sport if they knew you were walking in unprotected. The factory entrance was guarded by men who looked like they ate violence for breakfast. They checked weapons, credentials, searched everyone who entered. Lena submitted to this pat-down, feeling hands that lingered a second too long before waving her through. Inside, the factory had been transformed. The main floor had been cleared and converted into an arena. A regulation-sized cage sat in the center, not a boxing ring, a cage, octagon-shaped with chain-link walls that stretched 12 feet high. Bloodstains discolored the canvas, old and new, a palimpsest of violence. Around the cage, stadium seating rose in tiers. Hundreds of people filled the stands. Wealthy gamblers in expensive suits, underground figures whose faces Lena recognized from wanted posters, civilians who'd paid obscene amounts for the privilege of watching people destroy each other. The noise was overwhelming. Shouting, betting, the animal roar of a crowd hungry for blood. This way, Marco guided her through the chaos toward the fighter prep area. They passed other competitors, men and women who looked like they'd been carved from granite and rage. Each one radiated the kind of danger that made normal people cross the street. Lena's prep room was barely large enough for 3 people. A bench, a table with water and basic medical supplies, walls covered in graffiti from fighters past. Some of it was bravado. Some of it was prayers. Dom immediately began his ritual, checking her hands, her feet, examining her for any sign of weakness that could be exploited. "How you feeling?" he asked, all business. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. It's confidence that gets you killed. Marco stood by the door, watching the hallway. They're doing the draw now. Random assignment for first-round matches. We'll know who you're fighting in about 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes felt like hours. Lena paced the small room, shaking out her arms, forcing herself to breathe. Everything she'd trained for came down to this. All the pain, the sacrifice, the rebuilding, it either mattered or it didn't. A man appeared in the doorway, one of the tournament organizers, clipboard in hand. Cross, you're up third. Your opponent is Dmitry Kozlov. Lena's blood turned to ice. Kozlov. Not Victor. Victor was the uncle, the crime lord, but Dmitry was Victor's nephew, the man whose brain aneurysm 3 years ago had set this whole nightmare in motion, except Dmitry wasn't dead. That's not possible, Lena breathed. He died. The doctors said, clearly the doctors were wrong. The organizer shrugged. You've got 20 minutes. Be ready. He left. Silence filled the room like poison gas. Marco's expression had gone cold, calculating. This isn't coincidence. Victor arranged this. He got Dmitry into the tournament specifically to fight you. But how? Dmitry was... He should be... Doesn't matter how. He's alive. He's here. And in 20 minutes, you're going to face him in a cage. Marco grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. I need you to focus. Forget the past. Forget what you thought was true. There's only now. Can you do this? Could she? 3 years ago, she'd fought Dmitry and watched him collapse, seizing, blood pouring from his nose and ears while she screamed for help. That image had haunted her every day since, and now she had to face him again. Only this time, there were no doctors, no rules, no mercy. Yes, she said, voice steadier than she felt. I can do this. Good. Marco released her. Dom, get her ready. The next 20 minutes blurred. Dom wrapped her hands with the precision of a surgeon. Marco went over strategy, techniques, ways to end a fight quickly. But Lena barely heard him. Her mind was stuck on one thought. Dmitry was alive, which meant everything she'd believed for 3 years was a lie, which meant Victor had lied, had used his nephew's supposed death as an excuse to hunt her, to destroy her life, to kill Tommy. Rage built in her chest, not the hot, explosive kind, but something colder, focused, a blade of ice that cut through fear and doubt. When the call came, Lena walked to the cage with the mechanical precision of someone who'd already decided how this ended. The crowd noise intensified as she stepped into view. People screamed her old nickname, Knockout, Knockout, some recognizing her from her fighting days. Others just screamed for violence, for spectacle, for the promise of suffering. Lena climbed into the cage, feeling the chain link rattle under her hands. The canvas was rough beneath her bare feet. The overhead lights were blinding, turning everything outside the cage into darkness. Across from her, Dmitry Kozlov entered. He looked different than she remembered. Bigger, harder, with a scar running from his hairline down to his jaw on the left side. Visible evidence of whatever medical trauma he'd survived. His eyes found hers across the cage, and in them, Lena saw nothing but hatred. The referee, a scarred veteran whose face suggested he'd fought in this cage before, called them to center. You know the rules, he said, voice barely audible over the crowd. There are no rules. Fight until someone can't continue. No eye gouging, no biting, no groin strikes. Everything else is fair game. Touch gloves if you want. Otherwise, back to your corners. Dmitry spat at Lena's feet. She didn't react, just turned and walked back to her corner where Marco and Dom waited outside the cage. Remember, Marco said urgently, fingers gripping the chain link. He's going to want to make this personal. Don't let him. Stay technical. Stay smart. End this quick. I will. The bell rang, a harsh electronic buzz that cut through the noise like a scalpel. Dmitry charged immediately, no feeling out, no strategy, just raw aggression, trying to overwhelm her with volume and violence. He threw wild combinations, each punch carrying bad intentions, trying to take her head off. But Lena had spent 2 months training against brawlers. She moved, angled out, let his punches cut through empty air, waited for the opening she knew would come. It came 15 seconds in. Dmitry overextended on a right hook, his weight too far forward. Lena stepped inside, grabbed his arm, and used his momentum to throw him to the canvas with a judo toss that rattled the cage. The crowd roared. She didn't follow him down, didn't try to grapple, just reset her stance and waited for him to stand. Dmitri got up, face flushed with rage and embarrassment. "You should have stayed hidden, bitch," he snarled. Lena said nothing. Silence was its own weapon. He came again, smarter this time. Still aggressive, but with technique behind it. He'd been training too, preparing for this moment. His combinations were tighter, his defense better. A few shots got through, a jab that snapped her head back, a body kick that drove air from her lungs. But Lena had been hurt by better fighters. She weathered the storm, absorbed what she couldn't avoid, and started picking him apart. A straight right that broke his nose, a leg kick that made him limp, a liver shot that doubled him over long enough for her to sink a guillotine choke. Dmitri powered out, slamming her into the cage wall. The impact drove stars across her vision. He drove his shoulder into her ribs, the same ribs Marco had cracked 2 months ago, sending pain lancing through her entire body. She grimaced, fought through it, brought her knee up into his face. Once, twice, 3 times, until he staggered back, blood pouring from his destroyed nose. They separated, both breathing hard, both marked. "You killed me," Dmitri rasped, spitting blood. 3 years I was in a coma. 3 years of nothing while you ran like a coward. So that was the truth. Not dead. Coma. And now he wanted payment in blood. "I didn't kill you," Lena said, voice cold. "But I'm about to." She attacked with everything she'd learned in 2 months of hell. Every technique Marco had drilled into her. Every combination Dom had made her practice until it was muscle memory. She became a storm of controlled violence, breaking Dmitri down piece by piece. His defense crumbled, his guard dropped. And when the opening came, that perfect moment every fighter waits for, Lena took it. A Superman punch that caught him clean on the jaw, followed by a knee as he fell, then ground and pound that turned his face into a canvas of blood and broken bone. She rained down elbows, fists, staying controlled enough to avoid killing him, but brutal enough to ensure he never got back up. The referee pulled her off. The crowd exploded. Lena stood in the center of the cage, chest heaving, Dmitri's blood on her hands and face, and felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Victory. Not just winning, domination. The complete and total destruction of everything she'd feared. Marco and Dom rushed into the cage, Dom checking her for damage while Marco gripped her shoulders. "You did it," he said, and in his voice was something like awe. "You actually did it." But Lena barely heard him, because standing in the front row of the crowd, watching with cold fury, was Viktor Kozlov himself. Their eyes met across the chaos. In Viktor's gaze, Lena saw a promise. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The war had just begun. Viktor didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there in his $1,000 suit, surrounded by armed men who looked like they'd been carved from the same violent stone he was, and watched Lena with the patience of a predator who knew his prey couldn't escape. Marco saw him too. His grip on Lena's shoulder tightened, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "We need to get you out of here," he said quietly, urgency threading through his voice. "Now." But the tournament official was already climbing into the cage, microphone in hand, amplified voice cutting through the chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen, your winner by technical knockout, Lena Knockout Cross." The crowd's response was deafening. Money changed hands in the stands, gamblers settling bets while others screamed for more blood. This was what they'd come for. Violence, dominance, the complete destruction of one human being by another. Dom was already working, checking Lena's face, her ribs, cataloging damage with professional efficiency. "You're mostly intact," he muttered. "Some bruising, possible hairline fracture in your left hand from that final barrage. Nothing that'll stop you from fighting tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Lena's head was still spinning, adrenaline making everything sharp and unreal. "The tournament runs 3 nights," Marco reminded her. "Winners advance to the next round. You've got maybe 18 hours before you fight again." He guided her out of the cage, Dom flanking her other side, creating a protective wall of bodies between her and the crowd. As they moved through the arena toward the prep room, people reached out, trying to touch her, to grab a piece of whatever violence she represented. Marco's security detail materialized from nowhere, forming a corridor through the chaos. Lena kept her eyes forward, refusing to look back at where Victor stood. But she could feel his gaze like a physical weight, pressing down on her shoulders, promising retribution. They made it to the prep room. Marco locked the door behind them, while Dom sat Lena down and began his post-fight examination. "That was stupid," Marco said, pacing like a caged animal. "Letting him bait you into ground and pound like that? You could have ended it with the guillotine, could have choked him unconscious and been done. Instead, you made a statement. He deserved it." "I don't care what he deserved. I care about keeping you alive." Marco stopped pacing, fixed her with a look that was equal parts anger and fear. "Victor's here. Did you see him? Did you see the way he was watching you? Hard to miss. This changes everything. He's not going to wait until after the tournament. He's going to move on you tonight, tomorrow, whenever he gets an opening." Marco ran a hand through his hair, thinking fast. "We need to get you somewhere safe, somewhere he can't reach." "There's nowhere he can't reach," Lena said quietly. "You know that. Victor's got connections in every corner of this city. If he wants me dead, geography isn't going to stop him." "Then what do you suggest?" "I keep fighting. I win this tournament, and when it's over, I make him an offer he can't refuse." Marco laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you can negotiate with Victor Kozlov, the man who spent 3 years hunting you, who watched his nephew get destroyed and didn't even flinch?" "I don't know. But running didn't work last time. Maybe it's time to try something different." Dom finished his examination, straightening up with a grunt. "She's right about one thing. Running just delays the inevitable. Better to face it head on while you still have momentum." He looked at Marco. "We can protect her for the next 2 days. After that," he shrugged. "After that, it's her fight." Someone pounded on the door. All three of them tensed, Marco's hand moving to the gun Lena knew he carried in a shoulder holster beneath his jacket. "Vieri!" a voice called from the other side. "It's Sal. We got a situation." Marco opened the door a crack. His lieutenant stood there, face flushed, breathing hard like he'd been running. "What situation?" "Kozlov's people are asking questions. Lot of questions." "About her?" Sal jerked his chin toward Lena. "And they're offering money, serious money, for information about where she's staying, who she's with, vulnerabilities. Anyone take the offer?" "Not yet, but you know how it is. Everyone's got a price." Marco's jaw tightened. He looked back at Lena, decision crystallizing behind his eyes. "Change of plans. You're not going back to your apartment. You're staying at my place tonight. Private floor, security that can't be bought. It's the safest option." Lena wanted to argue, to insist she could take care of herself. But the truth was, she was exhausted, battered, and in no shape to fight off assassins if Victor decided to send them. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Okay," she said. They left the factory through a back exit, avoiding the main crowd. Marco's SUV was waiting in an alley, engine running, driver ready. They piled in. Lena, Marco, Dom, and 2 security guys whose names she didn't know and didn't ask for. The drive through Chicago's south side was tense and silent. Lena watched the city slide past through tinted windows, neon and darkness in equal measure. This was the same city she'd hidden in for 3 years, but tonight it felt different, foreign, like she was seeing it through new eyes. Marco's building was in the Gold Coast, the kind of high-rise where apartments started at 7 figures and privacy was the main product being sold. They pulled into an underground garage, took a private elevator that required a key card and biometric scan. His penthouse occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan and the city skyline. The decor was expensive but minimal, all clean lines and neutral colors, the kind of space that looked lived in but carefully controlled, like the man who owned it. "Guest rooms down that hall," Marco said, pointing. "Bathrooms stocked with whatever you need. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry." "I'm not." "You should eat anyway. Dom, make sure she eats something. I need to make some calls." He disappeared into what looked like an office, door closing with a soft click. Dom guided Lena to the guest room, which was twice the size of her entire apartment. A king bed dominated one wall, dressed in white linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She sat on the edge of it, suddenly aware of how badly her body hurt. Shower first, Dom said, reading her exhaustion. Hot water, 20 minutes. It'll help with the stiffness. Then food, then ice on that hand. You've got a long day tomorrow. He left her alone. Lena sat there for a moment, processing everything that had happened. She'd won. She'd faced the ghost that had haunted her for 3 years and destroyed him. But instead of feeling triumphant, she just felt tired and aware that this was only the beginning. The shower helped. She stood under water hot enough to hurt, watching Dimitri's blood circle the drain in pink spirals. Her knuckles were raw, her ribs a symphony of purple and yellow bruising. But nothing was broken. Nothing that wouldn't heal. When she emerged 20 minutes later, wrapped in a bathrobe that was absurdly soft, she found food waiting on a tray in the bedroom. Simple stuff: protein, carbs, fruit, fighter fuel. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, her mind elsewhere. A knock on the door. Marco's voice. You decent? Decent enough. He entered carrying 2 glasses of amber liquid, bourbon from the smell. He handed her one and sat in the chair across from the bed. To surviving round 1, he said, raising his glass. Lena clinked hers against his, sipped. The bourbon burned in the best way, warming her from the inside out. I talked to some people, Marco said after a moment. Put out feelers about Victor's intentions. Consensus is that he's going to let you fight tomorrow. Wants to see if you survive the next round before he makes his move. Why wait? Because if someone else kills you in the tournament, he doesn't have to get his hands dirty. He can save his resources, avoid potential blowback from moving on you while you're under my protection. Marco swirled his bourbon, watching the liquid catch the light. But if you keep winning, keep advancing, that's when it gets complicated. How so? Because the deeper you go in this tournament, the more valuable you become. Not just as a fighter, but as a symbol. People are already talking about your comeback. The ghost who returned to haunt the underground. If you make it to the finals, you'll be untouchable in certain circles. Even Victor would have to think twice about moving on someone with that kind of status. Lena processed this, turning it over in her mind. So I need to keep winning. You need to stay alive. Winning is just the method. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking bourbon, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside the windows, Chicago glittered like a constellation of broken promises. Can I ask you something? Lena said eventually. Anything. Why do you really care? About me? About this tournament? About any of it? You said you were bored, but I don't buy that. There's something else. Marco studied his glass, choosing his words carefully. I had a sister once. Elena. She was a fighter too. Not in the ring, but in life. Refused to let anyone tell her who she could be or what she could do. Strong, stubborn, fearless. His voice went quiet. She got involved with the wrong people, made mistakes, and when she needed help, when she needed someone to stand with her, he trailed off. What happened? I wasn't there. I was building my empire, too focused on my own ambitions to notice she was drowning. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. She died thinking she was alone, thinking no one cared enough to fight for her. Lena felt something twist in her chest. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was my fault, my failure. Marco looked up, met her eyes. When I saw you in that club, when you spilled that drink and stood there like you were ready to burn the whole place down rather than apologize, you reminded me of her, and I thought maybe this time I could do it right. Be there for someone who needs it. Make up for the time I wasn't there before. That's a lot of weight to put on a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore, and the weight's mine to carry, not yours. He finished his bourbon, stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be harder than today. After he left, Lena lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, mind racing. She thought about Victor, about Dimitri, about 3 years of running that had led her right back to where she started. She thought about Marco and his dead sister, about Dom and his clinical assessment of damage, about Tommy and the gym burning while she ran. She thought about the fighter in the mirror, the woman with hard eyes and harder hands who'd chosen violence over safety, chosen confrontation over peace. And somewhere in the darkest hours before dawn, she made a decision. She wasn't going to just survive this tournament, she was going to win it. And then she was going to end Viktor Kozlov's ability to hurt anyone ever again. Not by killing him, that was too easy, too clean. But by destroying everything he'd built, piece by piece, until he had nothing left but the memory of the woman he'd underestimated. Sleep came eventually, shallow and haunted by dreams of blood and fire. When morning arrived, Dom was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with the efficiency of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Eggs, oatmeal, supplements in neat rows. "Eat," he ordered. "Then we're doing a light workout. Nothing intense, just movement to keep loose." The light workout turned out to be an hour of stretching, shadowboxing, and technique drills in Marco's private gym. Dom pushed her just hard enough to keep her sharp without risking injury. "Tonight's opponent is going to be different," he said, watching her work the heavy bag. "First round was about survival. Second round is where the real fighters show up. The people who made it through yesterday are all killers. No weak links left." "Who am I fighting?" "Draw's not until this afternoon, but based on the bracket, you're looking at either Jade Chen or a Brazilian named Carlos Mendez." Lena remembered both from the dossiers Marco had shown her. Jade, the psychological warfare specialist. Carlos, the submission artist who put people in comas. "Which one would you rather face?" Dom asked. "Neither. But if I had to choose, Jade. At least with her, it's mind games. Carlos is just brutality. Brutality you can train for. Mind games are trickier." Dom caught the heavy bag, stilling it. "If it's Jade, don't engage verbally. Don't react to whatever she says or does. She's looking for buttons to push, weaknesses to exploit. Give her nothing. And if it's Carlos, don't let him take you down. Stay on your feet, strike from distance, and if he gets a hold of you, break it immediately. His whole game is about controlling position and grinding you down until you make a mistake. One mistake with him is unconsciousness or death." They trained until early afternoon, then Dom forced her to rest. Lena lay on the couch in Marco's living room, ice on her hand, trying to quiet her mind. Marco was in his office, handling business that apparently didn't stop just because he was managing a fighter in a death tournament. Around 3 p.m., Sal arrived with news. "It's Jade Chen," he announced. "She submitted her opponent in 90 seconds last night. Armbar that separated the shoulder. Girl was screaming so loud they heard it in the parking lot." Marco emerged from his office, face grim. 90 seconds. Jesus. "She's fast," Sal continued, "and smart. Spent the whole fight talking, getting in her opponent's head. By the time she locked in the submission, the girl practically gave her the arm." "What was she saying?" Lena asked. "Don't know. Different language, Mandarin, maybe. But whatever it was, it worked." Marco dismissed Sal, then turned to Lena. "You speak Mandarin?" "No." "Then that's one advantage she won't have. But she'll find others. Dom's right. Don't engage with her. Don't give her anything to work with." "I won't." The hours before the fight crawled by. Lena tried to nap, but her mind wouldn't settle. Tried to eat, but everything tasted like cardboard. Tried to watch TV, but couldn't focus on anything long enough to process it. Finally, mercifully, it was time. They arrived at the factory as the sun was setting, the same chaotic energy filling the arena as the night before. But tonight, the crowd was different. More intense. More bloodthirsty. Word had spread about the first round's brutality, and people had come expecting escalation. In the prep room, Dom wrapped her hands with ritualistic precision while Marco ran through strategy one final time. "Jade's going to try to get in your head. She'll say things, do things, try to make you emotional. Emotional fighters make mistakes. You cannot afford mistakes." His eyes bore into hers. "Stay cold, stay technical. Make her come to you." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because this isn't like Dimitri." Dimitri was angry, predictable. Jade is a tactician. She's been studying you, watching footage from last night, identifying patterns. She knows how you move, how you think. You need to be unpredictable. The call came. 5 minutes. Lena stood, shook out her arms, rolled her neck. Everything hurt from yesterday, but it was manageable hurt. Functional pain. Dom had kept her together. They walked to the cage through the screaming crowd. The noise was somehow worse than yesterday, amplified by anticipation and alcohol. Lena kept her eyes forward, refusing to scan the crowd for Victor. He was there somewhere. She could feel it. The cage door opened. She stepped through. Jade Chen was already inside, standing in the center with the stillness of a statue. She was smaller than Lena expected. Maybe 5'4", couldn't weigh more than 120. But her body was all lean muscle and precise movement, like a weapon designed for a specific purpose. Their eyes met across the cage. Jade smiled. "I've heard about you," she said in perfect English, no accent. "The ghost who came back from the dead. Impressive." Lena said nothing, moved to her corner where Marco and Dom waited outside the chain link. "Don't respond," Marco reminded her, "no matter what she says." The referee called them to center. Same speech as yesterday. No rules except the few rules. Fight until someone can't continue. Jade extended her hand for a glove touch. A gesture of respect or a trap. Lena couldn't tell. She touched gloves anyway. No point being disrespectful. "You fight like someone with ghosts," Jade said quietly, close enough that only Lena could hear. "I can see them in your eyes. The people you've lost. The people you blame yourself for." She tilted her head. "Does their blood weigh heavy? Does it wake you up at night?" Lena's jaw tightened, but she said nothing, walked back to her corner. The bell rang. Jade came forward cautiously, hands high, footwork precise. Not aggressive like Dimitri had been, but measured, calculating. She threw a few probing jabs, testing Lena's reactions, looking for tells. "Your old trainer," Jade said conversationally, circling. "Tommy, wasn't it? I read about the fire. Terrible way to die. Screaming, trapped, knowing help wouldn't come in time." Lena felt ice form in her chest, kept her face neutral, her guard tight. "I wonder if he blamed you," Jade continued, feinting a kick. "In those final moments, if he wished he'd never met you." "Don't engage, don't respond, stay technical." Lena threw a combination, jab, cross, hook, but Jade slipped them all with minimal movement, wasting no energy. She countered with a leg kick that hit like a baseball bat, targeting the same thigh Lena had damaged yesterday. "You move like you're compensating for an injury," Jade observed. "Left ribs, I think. Someone hurt you there recently and it never quite healed." Another leg kick, same spot, building damage. Lena adjusted her stance, redistributing weight. Jade was right. Her ribs were compromised, had been since Marco cracked them 2 months ago. Dom had taped them, managed the pain, but they were still a weakness. "I could target them," Jade mused, almost to herself. "Break them properly this time. Make you choose between protecting your head or your body. Force you to leave something open." She shot for a takedown, faster than Lena anticipated. Lena sprawled, defended, but Jade was already transitioning, looking for an angle. They grappled against the cage. Jade's technique was flawless, each movement efficient and purposeful. "You know what the difference is between us?" Jade whispered, close enough that Lena could feel her breath. "You fight to survive, I fight to win, and that makes all the difference." She locked in a standing guillotine, trying to choke Lena from the clinch position. Lena's vision started to tunnel, oxygen cutting off, but she remembered Dom's training, categorized the pain, assessed the danger, respond appropriately. Not a death choke, a pressure choke, meant to weaken, not kill. Lena drove her weight forward, lifting Jade off her feet, and slammed her into the cage wall. Once, twice. The third impact broke Jade's grip. They separated, both breathing hard. "Better," Jade acknowledged. "You're learning, but it won't be enough." She attacked with a flurry of strikes, punches, elbows, knees, all targeting Lena's left side. Every impact sent pain lancing through her ribs, making it harder to breathe, harder to defend. Jade was systematically dismantling her, piece by piece. Lena tried to circle away, create distance, but Jade cut off the angle. Tried to counter, but her timing was off. The pain disrupting her rhythm. She was losing, and they both knew it. "This is the part where most people quit," Jade said, almost kindly. "Where the pain gets so bad that survival instinct overrides everything else. It's okay to quit. No shame in it. I'll even make it quick." Something in those words, the false kindness, the patronizing tone, ignited something in Lena's chest. Not anger. Something colder. She thought about Tommy, burning, about 3 years of hiding, about Victor watching from the crowd, waiting for her to fail, about Marco and his dead sister, about Dom and his clinical assessments, about everyone who'd invested in her comeback. And she thought about the woman she used to be, the fighter who went undefeated for 27 fights, the one who never quit, never stopped, never gave anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break. That woman wasn't gone. She'd just been sleeping. Lena stopped defending, stopped trying to avoid the pain. Instead, she stepped into it, accepting the damage as the price of getting inside Jade's guard. She took a brutal elbow to the ribs that definitely cracked something. But it got her close enough to grab Jade's arm, close enough to throw her into the cage wall with the full force of her weight behind it. Jade's head bounced off the chain link with a sound like a bell ringing. For the first time in the fight, Jade's expression changed. The calm confidence wavered, replaced by something that might have been concern. Lena didn't give her time to recover. She pressed forward with the relentless pressure of someone who'd decided pain was just information, another variable to manage. She threw combinations that sacrificed defense for offense, trading damage for position. A right hook caught Jade flush on the temple. A left uppercut snapped her head back. A knee to the midsection doubled her over. Jade tried to shoot for another takedown, desperate now, but Lena sprawled perfectly and caught her in a guillotine of her own. A deep, tight choke that cut off blood flow to the brain. Jade's face turned red, then purple. Her hands clawed at Lena's arms, trying to break the grip, but Lena had locked her fingers and positioned her hip perfectly. This wasn't a pressure choke. This was a blood choke. And blood chokes didn't care how technical you were. 15 seconds. Jade's movements became sluggish, desperate. 20 seconds. Her eyes rolled back. 25 seconds. Her body went limp. The referee pulled Lena off, checked Jade's pulse, waved to the medical team. The crowd erupted. Lena stood in the center of the cage, gasping for air through what were definitely broken ribs, watching as they carried Jade out on a stretcher. She'd won. Again. Against an opponent who should have outthought her, outfought her, out-everything-ed her. But winning didn't feel triumphant. It felt necessary. Survival in its purest form. Dom and Marco rushed into the cage, Dom immediately examining her ribs with hands that were surprisingly gentle. "Definitely broken this time," he muttered. "At least 2, maybe 3. You shouldn't be standing." "But I am." "Yeah, you are." He looked at her with something that might have been respect. "You're either the toughest person I've ever met or the stupidest. Haven't decided which." Marco said nothing, just gripped her shoulder in a gesture that conveyed more than words could. Pride. Fear. Understanding. As they helped her out of the cage, Lena's eyes found Victor in the crowd again. This time, his expression had changed, no longer patient and predatory. Now he looked uncertain, like he'd bet on a horse to lose and it kept winning anyway. Good, Lena thought through the haze of pain. Let him doubt. Let him wonder. Let him realize that the woman he'd spent 3 years hunting wasn't the same one standing in this cage. Because she wasn't. She'd been forged in the fire he'd set, tempered by the pain he'd caused. And now she was something harder, sharper, more dangerous than he could have imagined. The war wasn't over, but the balance of power was shifting, and for the first time in 3 years, Lena Cross believed she might actually survive it. The pain didn't hit until they got her back to Marco's penthouse. Dom had injected her with something at the factory, local anesthetic mixed with what he called the good stuff, that kept her functional through the crowd, through the drive, through the elevator ride up. But chemicals only delayed the inevitable, and when they wore off around 2 a.m., Lena discovered what broken ribs actually felt like. Every breath was a knife. Every movement was agony. She lay in the guest bed, curled on her side, trying to find a position that didn't make her want to scream. Marco appeared in the doorway, still dressed despite the late hour. He crossed to the bed without asking permission, sat on the edge. "Dom says you shouldn't fight tomorrow," he said quietly. "Says you need at least a week for the ribs to stabilize, maybe 2 before you can take impact again." What does he know? He knows that one good body shot tomorrow could puncture a lung, could kill you in the cage before anyone realizes what's happening. Marco's voice was flat, emotionless, the tone he used when he was fighting his own feelings. "You've proven your point, Lena. You came back. You won 2 rounds. No one expected that. You can withdraw now, and no one would blame you. Victor would. Fuck Victor." "Easy for you to say. He's not hunting you." Lena tried to sit up, gasped as pain lanced through her torso. Marco caught her shoulders, helped her settle against the headboard. "If I quit now, everything I've done means nothing. Dimitri, Jade, all of it just becomes a story about the fighter who couldn't finish. And Victor gets to walk away knowing he broke me." "You're already broken, literally, in several places." "Then I'll fight broken." Lena met his eyes, saw the fear there beneath his careful control. "I know what you're trying to do. Being reasonable, giving me an out, playing the concerned protector. But I don't need protecting. I need you to get me to that cage tomorrow night and trust that I know what I'm doing. Do you? Know what you're doing? No, she admitted, but I haven't known what I was doing since the night I spilled bourbon on you. That hasn't stopped me yet. Marco looked away, jaw working. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. My sister said something similar, right before she died. Told me she had it under control, that she knew the risks, that I needed to trust her. He turned back to Lena. And I did. I trusted her. And they found her body in the river 3 days later. The words hung between them, heavy with old grief. I'm not your sister, Lena said gently. I know, but you're doing that same thing she did, charging into danger because you're too stubborn to admit when the odds are impossible. And I don't... He stopped, started again. I don't want to watch another woman I care about destroy herself because I wasn't strong enough to stop her. Lena reached out, ignoring the pain the movement cost her, and took his hand. His fingers were scarred, calloused, capable of tremendous violence, but they trembled slightly in hers. You can't stop me, she said. No one can. This is my choice, my fight, my life to risk. All you can do is decide whether you're going to be in my corner when I need you, or if you're going to make me do this alone. Marco stared at their joined hands for a long moment. Then he nodded, barely perceptible in the dim light. I'll be there, he said. But if you die in that cage, I'm going to be really fucking angry at you. I'll keep that in mind. He left her then, and Lena was alone with the pain and the darkness and the knowledge that tomorrow, tonight technically, given the hour, she would face the semifinals. One fight away from the finals. One fight away from the kind of victory that could rewrite her entire story, if she survived. Dom woke her at noon carrying a breakfast tray and enough medical supplies to stock a field hospital. He examined her ribs with practiced hands, prodding in ways that made her bite back screams. You're insane, he announced. Certifiably, completely insane. These ribs need immobilization and rest. Instead, you're going to let someone punch them for money. Not for money, for freedom. Same difference in this world. He began wrapping her torso in athletic tape, layer after layer, creating a protective shell that restricted her breathing but stabilized the broken bones. This is the best I can do. It'll support the ribs, prevent them from shifting around too much, but it won't stop them from hurting, and it won't protect you if someone targets them specifically. Then I won't let anyone target them. Right, because that's how fighting works. You just don't let people hit you. Dom's sarcasm was thick enough to cut. Look, I've worked with a lot of fighters. Tough guys, crazy guys, people who thought pain was just weakness leaving the body. You know what they all have in common? What? They're either dead or crippled, because toughness doesn't beat physics. It doesn't beat anatomy. You can will yourself through a lot, but you cannot will your body to ignore catastrophic damage. Then it's a good thing I don't plan on taking catastrophic damage. Dom finished taping, stepped back to examine his work. Lena looked down at herself, torso wrapped tight as a mummy, every breath shallow and controlled. Who are you fighting tonight? Dom asked. Don't know yet. Finals bracket gets announced at 6. Doesn't matter who it is, they're going to be the best of the best. Last person standing beside you. And unlike you, they're probably not fighting with broken ribs and a death wish. Probably not, Lena agreed. But they also probably haven't spent the last 3 years running from the monster in the crowd. They don't know what desperation feels like. I do. And desperate people are dangerous. She spent the afternoon in Marco's gym, moving carefully, testing her range of motion within the tape's constraints. Everything hurt, but it was manageable hurt. Survivable hurt. She shadowboxed, working combinations that didn't require twisting her torso too much, finding angles that minimized the pain. Marco watched from the doorway, silent. At 6 p.m., Sal arrived with the bracket announcement. Sergei Volkov, he said, reading from his phone. Former Russian Special Forces, 14 kills in underground fights. Specialty is joint destruction, breaks people down piece by piece until they can't defend themselves anymore. Lena remembered the dossier. Sergei was the nightmare fighter, the one who didn't just win but dismantled opponents with surgical precision. He'd put his last opponent in the hospital with both shoulders separated, both knees hyperextended, and a fractured skull. The man would never fight again. Might never walk properly again. "Well," Marco said into the silence. "Fuck." "That's one way to put it," Dom muttered. Lena said nothing. Just kept moving, kept shadowboxing, kept her breathing controlled and her mind clear. Panic was a luxury. Fear was a distraction. All that mattered was the fight. "There's still time to withdraw," Marco tried one last time. "Medical exemption. Dom can write up paperwork saying you're unfit to compete. No one would question it." "No." "Lena, I said no." She stopped moving, turned to face him. "I'm fighting Sergey tonight. I'm going to beat him. And tomorrow night, I'm going to win this whole damn tournament. That's what's happening. The only question is whether you're going to help me or keep trying to save me from myself." Marco's expression hardened. Then he nodded, decision made. "All right, then we prepare. Dom, what do we need to do to get her through this?" Dom scratched his jaw, thinking. Sergey's a technician. He looks for weaknesses and exploits them methodically. He's going to see those ribs within the first 30 seconds and spend the rest of the fight targeting them. So we can't hide the injury. We use it. "Use it how?" Lena asked. "Make him think you're more damaged than you are. Sell the injury. Make him overcommit to body shots. When he does, that's when you counter. He'll be expecting you to protect your ribs, to shell up and defend. Instead, you attack through the pain. Catch him off guard." "That's a terrible plan," Marco said. "You got a better one?" Silence. "Didn't think so." Dom looked at Lena. "Can you do it? Can you take punishment to your worst injury and not break?" Lena thought about 3 years of hiding, about Tommy burning, about standing across from Victor in the crowd, seeing his certainty that she would fail. "Yes," she said, "I can do it." The factory was packed beyond capacity when they arrived. Word had spread that this was the semifinals, that only the most brutal fighters remained. People who couldn't get tickets stood outside, watching on screens that had been set up in the parking lot. Money flowed like water, bets being placed on who would die, who would withdraw, who would survive the night. In the prep room, the atmosphere was different from previous nights. Quieter, more focused. Even the hallway outside seemed subdued, like the building itself was holding its breath. Dom wrapped Lena's hands with extra padding over the knuckles, sacrificing some speed for protection. "You're going to need every advantage," he muttered. "Sergey hits like a freight train. Break your hand on his skull and you're done." Marco paced, checking his phone every 30 seconds, fielding calls from people Lena didn't know about, matters she didn't understand. His empire didn't pause for her fights, but he was here anyway, splitting his attention between her survival and his business. "Kozlov's in the building," Sal reported, appearing in the doorway. "Front row, same as before. But this time he brought more people, armed people. Security's on edge." "Let them be," Marco said. "He makes a move on her before the tournament ends, it'll start a war he can't win. He knows that. And after the tournament? After is after. We'll deal with it when we get there." The call came. 5 minutes. Lena stood, testing her movement one final time. The tape restricted her breathing but stabilized her torso. The pain was constant, a dull roar beneath her consciousness, but she'd learned to partition it off, to acknowledge it without letting it control her. They walked to the cage through a corridor of noise and violence. The crowd was frenzied, sensing blood, screaming for the kind of destruction that would give them stories to tell for years. Sergey was already in the cage when Lena arrived. He was massive, 6'3", maybe 240, with the build of someone who'd spent a lifetime turning his body into a weapon. Shaved head, dead eyes, a face that looked like it had been carved from stone in bad intentions. He stood utterly still in his corner, not warming up, not moving, just existing with the patient stillness of a predator that knew its prey was already caught. Lena climbed through the ropes, feeling every eye on her. The cage door locked with a sound like a cell closing. No way out now, except through. The referee called them to center. Sergey moved with surprising grace for a man his size, each step economical and precise. "I will break you slowly," he said in heavily accented English. "Not because I hate you, because it is what I do. Nothing personal." Lena met his dead eyes and said nothing. Words were wasted breath. They touched gloves. His hand engulfed hers completely and returned to their corners. Marco gripped the chain link from outside the cage. Remember the plan. Sell the injury, draw him in, counter when he commits. I remember. And Lena? His voice was quiet, urgent. If it gets too bad, if you can't continue, there's no shame in quitting. I'd rather have you alive and defeated than dead and victorious. She didn't respond. The bell rang. Sergei came forward with the methodical patience of someone who'd done this so many times it was routine. No aggression, no rush, just steady pressure. He threw testing jabs, feeling out her defense, watching how she moved. Lena circled, keeping her guard high, trying to hide how shallow her breathing was. Every inhale pulled at the broken ribs, sending pain radiating through her torso. Sergei feinted a jab and threw a body kick instead, fast, brutal, aimed directly at her left ribs. Lena blocked it with her elbow, but the impact still sent shockwaves through her damaged bones. She gasped, couldn't help it, and saw Sergei's expression shift. Not a smile exactly, just acknowledgement. He'd found the weakness. He pressed forward, throwing combinations now, every other strike targeting her body. Left hook to the ribs, right uppercut to the body. Leg kick to the same spot Dom had taped so carefully. Each impact was precise, calculated, designed to maximize damage. Lena defended as best she could, but Sergei was relentless. He cut off angles, trapped her against the cage, and went to work on her midsection like a carpenter breaking down a wall. A straight right to her ribs cracked something else. She felt it give, felt something shift inside her that shouldn't shift. Her vision blurred. Her legs wobbled. The crowd roared, sensing the kill. Sergei grabbed her in a clinch, controlling her head, and drove a knee into her damaged ribs with the full force of his weight behind it. Lena screamed, couldn't help it. The pain was beyond anything she'd experienced, beyond anything Dom's training had prepared her for. Something vital was broken, maybe punctured. She could taste blood in her mouth from somewhere internal. You should quit now, Sergei said, not unkind, before I hurt you worse. Lena spat blood. Through the haze of pain, she saw Victor in the front row, leaning forward, anticipation written across his face. This was what he'd waited for, her destruction, her final defeat. And something in Lena's chest, something deeper than the broken ribs, deeper than the physical damage, refused to give him that satisfaction. She thought about Dom's plan. Sell the injury, draw him in, counter when he commits. So she sold it, let her guard drop, let her knees buckle, made herself look like she was seconds from collapse. Sergei saw it, recognized the signs of a fighter who'd reached her limit. He adjusted his position, setting up for a finishing combination, a body shot to fold her over, then an uppercut to finish it clean. He threw the body shot with everything he had. Lena didn't defend it, took it full force, let it drive the air from her lungs, let the pain wash over her like a wave. But in that moment when Sergei was committed, when all his weight was forward and his guard was open, she moved, not away from the pain, into it. She drove her forehead into Sergei's face with a headbutt that shattered his nose and opened a gash above his eye. The impact sent pain screaming through her own skull, but she didn't care. Pain was just information now. Sergei stumbled back, surprised for the first time in the fight. Lena didn't give him time to recover. She attacked with this kind of violence that came from 3 years of suppressed rage, from every moment of hiding, from every nightmare about Tommy burning. She threw combinations that sacrificed technique for volume, accepting the damage to her ribs as the cost of getting through his defense. A right hook caught Sergei on the temple. A left uppercut snapped his head back. A spinning back elbow, a technique she hadn't thrown since her fighting days, opened another cut on his opposite eyebrow. Blood poured into Sergei's eyes, blinding him. He tried to clinch, to control her, but Lena was already moving, circling out, making him chase her with his vision compromised. She kicked out his lead leg, once, twice, 3 times, until he couldn't put weight on it properly. Then she attacked his damaged knee with the systematic brutality he'd tried to use on her ribs. Sergei tried to defend, but blood and pain had slowed him. Lena caught him with a straight right that buckled his legs, followed by a left hook that put him on the canvas. The crowd went insane. Lena dropped on him, raining down strikes, ground and pound, elbows and fists, targeting his head with mechanical precision. Each impact sent pain lancing through her broken ribs, but she was beyond caring, beyond feeling. She'd entered that place fighters talk about but rarely reach, where pain is irrelevant and the only thing that matters is the fight. Sergei tried to cover up, to defend, but Lena was relentless. She beat through his guard, opened more cuts, turned his face into a mask of blood. The referee pulled her off. It took 3 tries. The first 2 times, Lena shrugged him off and kept striking. Only on the 3rd attempt did she process what was happening. That the fight was over, that Sergei was unconscious, that she'd won. She stood on trembling legs, the cage spinning around her. Dom and Marco were climbing through the ropes, shouting something she couldn't hear over the roar in her ears. Then her ribs reminded her they were broken, and she collapsed. Dom caught her before she hit the canvas, lowering her carefully. "Stay still," he ordered, fingers already checking her pulse, her breathing. "Don't move, don't talk, just breathe." Breathing was hard. Everything was hard. Lena stared up at the overhead lights, watching them blur and separate, feeling her body shutting down one system at a time. "We need a hospital," Marco was saying, phone already to his ear. "Now, I don't care about the tournament rules, she's bleeding internally. No hospital." Lena forced the words out through lips that tasted like copper. "Finals. Tomorrow." "Are you fucking insane? You can barely breathe." "Finals," she repeated. "Get me through tonight. I'll fight tomorrow." Dom looked at Marco. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Then Dom nodded, grim. "Get her to the car," he said. "I can stabilize her at the penthouse. But if she gets worse, if there's any sign of organ failure, she goes to the hospital, whether she likes it or not." They carried her out through a side exit, avoiding the crowd, avoiding Victor's eyes. The SUV was waiting, engine running. Dom climbed in the back with Lena, monitoring her vitals, injecting her with things from his medical bag. The drive to Marco's building was a blur of streetlights and pain. Lena drifted in and out of consciousness, catching fragments of conversation. Internal bleeding, minimal, ribs punctured muscle, not lung, incredibly lucky. Can't fight tomorrow. It's suicide. Tell her that. See how far you get. They got her upstairs into the guest room. Dom worked on her for what felt like hours, cleaning wounds, administering antibiotics, setting up an IV drip. Marco paced, made calls, coordinated things Lena didn't have the energy to process. Somewhere around 4 a.m., Dom pronounced her stable enough to sleep. "But if you move wrong," he warned, "if you twist or fall or take any impact, those ribs could shift and puncture something vital. You'd bleed out before we could get you help." "Understood," Lena whispered. Dom left, muttering about stubborn fighters and death wishes. Marco stayed. He pulled a chair next to the bed and sat there in the darkness, just existing in the same space. "You won," he said finally. "You beat Sergei Volkov, the man who's killed 14 opponents. You beat him half dead with broken ribs and internal damage. Doesn't feel like winning." "No, I imagine it doesn't." He was quiet for a moment. "The finals are tomorrow night. Your opponent is someone named Helena Rourke, Irish, former bare-knuckle champion. They say she once killed a man with a single punch in a Dublin parking lot. Great. She's undefeated, 42 fights, 42 wins, 38 by knockout." Marco's voice was carefully neutral. "She's also completely healthy. No injuries, no weaknesses, just pure, concentrated violence." Lena closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her. "Are you trying to scare me?" "I'm trying to give you an out. One last chance to walk away while you still can. You've come further than anyone expected. You've proven everything you needed to prove. No one would blame you for stopping here." "Victor would." "Fuck Victor, seriously. Let me handle Victor. I'll make a deal, pay him off, threaten him, whatever it takes. But you don't have to do this." Lena opened her eyes, looked at Marco sitting there in the dim light. He looked exhausted, worried, almost desperate. "Yes," she said quietly. "I do." Because this was never about Victor. Not really. It was about me, about proving to myself that I'm not the person who runs, that I'm not broken beyond repair, that 3 years of hiding didn't erase who I used to be. And if proving that kills you, then at least I'll die as myself. Not as a ghost, not as someone too afraid to fight. She tried to smile, though it hurt. Besides, you said you bet everything on me. Can't let you lose that bet. Marco laughed, but it sounded painful. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. You know that? I've been told. He reached out, took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV. His palm was warm, solid, real. Win or lose tomorrow, he said. You're not alone anymore. You know that, right? Whatever happens in that cage, whatever Victor does afterward, you've got people in your corner. Me, Dom, even Sal, though he'd never admit it. You're not fighting alone. Lena squeezed his hand, feeling tears prick her eyes. When had she last cried? 3 years? Longer? Thank you, she whispered. They sat like that until sleep claimed her, Marco keeping watch in the darkness, Lena's hand in his, two broken people finding something like peace in the hours before the final battle. When Lena woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and Dom was standing over her with an expression that suggested he'd found a corpse instead of a sleeping patient. How bad? She asked, voice rough as gravel. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being perfect health and 10 being actively dying? Dom pulled out a blood pressure cuff. You're hovering around an 8, maybe 8.5. Could be worse. Could also be better, like significantly better, like not fighting tonight better. He checked her vitals, grunted at whatever the numbers told him. Your blood pressure's low but stable. Internal bleeding seems to have stopped. The ribs are still broken in at least 4 places, possibly 5. You've got muscle damage, tissue trauma, and what I'm pretty sure is a hairline fracture in your orbital bone from that headbutt. But I can fight. Dom stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, sharp and bitter. You know what? Sure. Yeah, you can fight. You can also walk off a cliff or juggle chainsaws or any number of other suicidal activities. The question isn't, can you fight? It's, should you fight? And the answer to that is a resounding, medically certified no. Noted. Noted. That's it? I just told you that fighting tonight could kill you, and you say noted like I told you it might rain? Lena tried to sit up, gasped as her ribs protested. Dom helped her despite his obvious frustration, propping pillows behind her back until she could breathe without wanting to scream. Where's Marco? She asked, dealing with the aftermath of last night. Turns out when you beat Sergei Volkov within an inch of his life, it creates political complications. His sponsors aren't happy. Neither are the people who bet on him. Dom pulled out his medical bag, started preparing syringes. Marco's doing damage control, making sure those complications don't become your problem. And Victor? Still here. Still waiting. Dom's expression darkened. Actually made an offer through intermediaries this morning. Said if you withdraw from tonight's fight, he'll consider your debt paid. Let you walk away clean. Lena felt ice form in her chest. He thinks I'm going to lose. Or he thinks you're going to die trying. Either way, he wins. Dom began injecting her with a cocktail of medications, pain management, anti-inflammatories, something he called a Hail Mary in liquid form. But here's the thing about Victor's offer. It expires the moment you step in that cage tonight. You fight, you void the deal. Win or lose, he comes for you after. Then I better win. Better win. Right. Against Helen O'Rourke, the woman who's literally never lost a fight. Dom finished with the injections, started unwrapping her torso to examine the damage. You want to know what I think? Not particularly. I think you've got a death wish disguised as determination. I think you're so focused on proving something, to Victor, to yourself, to whoever, that you've lost sight of the fact that survival is actually an option worth considering. The tape came off, revealing a tapestry of bruises that looked like a Jackson Pollock painting done in purple and black. Dom prodded carefully, watching Lena's face for reactions. I think, Lena said through gritted teeth, that I spent 3 years surviving, and it was the worst 3 years of my life. So maybe I'd rather die fighting than live hiding. Ever consider that? Every day. Usually right before I talk myself out of it. Dom began retaping her ribs, this time adding extra support around the worst of the breaks. You know what the difference is between bravery and stupidity? What? Bravery has an exit strategy. Stupidity just charges forward hoping things work out. He pulled the tape tight, secured it. So tell me, Lena Cross, what's your exit strategy? She didn't answer because she didn't have one. There was no exit strategy. There was only forward. Through Helena, through Victor, through whatever came after. The path only led one direction, and turning back wasn't an option anymore. Marco returned around noon, looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. He carried coffee and breakfast from somewhere expensive, set it on the bedside table. Victor's made his position clear, he said without preamble. You fight tonight, the deal's off. He'll move on you the moment you leave the arena, win or lose. I know, Dom told me. And? And nothing, I'm fighting. Marco sat heavily in the chair he'd occupied for most of the night. I've been making calls, pulling in favors, reaching out to people who owe me. I can get you out of Chicago tonight. New identity, new city, enough money to start over properly. No hiding this time. Just a clean break. Running again? Strategic retreat. There's a difference. Not to me. Lena reached for the coffee, ignoring the way her hands shook. I appreciate what you're trying to do. Really. But I didn't come this far to run at the finish line. The finish line is a grave if you're not careful. Maybe, but at least it'll be my grave. My choice. Not Victor's. Not fear's. Mine. She sipped the coffee, bitter and perfect. Tell me about Helena. Marco's expression shifted, settling into the clinical assessment mode he used when discussing opponents. Helena Rourke, 34, born in Belfast, raised in the kind of poverty that turns people into predators or corpses. Started bare-knuckle fighting at 16 to support her family. By 20, she was the most feared fighter in Ireland. By 25, she'd expanded internationally. Weaknesses? None that anyone's found. She's fast, powerful, technically perfect. Doesn't trash talk, doesn't play mind games. Just destroys people efficiently and moves on. Marco pulled out his phone, showed Lena footage from Helena's previous fights. Watch. The video showed a woman slightly taller than Lena, built like coiled steel, with red hair pulled back in a tight braid. She moved with the economical grace of someone who'd spent decades perfecting violence. In the fight Marco had queued up, Helena faced a man twice her size. She slipped his first punch, countered with a combination so fast the camera barely caught it, and dropped him with a left hook that made his head bounce off the canvas like a basketball. Fight over. 40 seconds. Jesus, Lena breathed. That was 3 nights ago, her first round fight here. Second round, she submitted a grappling specialist with a rear naked choke in under 2 minutes. Third round, semi-finals, she broke a man's jaw, orbital bone, and nose with a single elbow. Referee stopped it on doctor's orders. Marco swiped to another video, this one showing Helena being interviewed after a fight. She stood there covered in someone else's blood, barely breathing hard, face expressionless as a statue. Do you enjoy hurting people? The interviewer asked. Helena considered the question. No, but I'm good at it, and the world pays well for things people are good at. Do you ever feel guilty? They chose to step in the ring, same as me. We all know the risks. Helena's eyes, pale green, Lena noticed, found the camera. You want to judge me for surviving? Be my guest, but I'll be here long after the judges are gone. The interview ended. Marco pocketed his phone. That's who you're fighting tonight. A woman with no weaknesses, no fear, and no mercy. A woman who treats violence like a 9-to-5 job and clocks out without a second thought. He leaned forward. So I'm asking you one more time, Lena. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want? Lena thought about Tommy, burning, about 3 years of invisibility, about Dimitri's hatred, Jade's mind games, Sergei's systematic brutality, about every moment that had led her to this point, sitting in a borrowed penthouse with broken ribs and a choice to make. Yes, she said, I'm certain. The hours before the fight passed in a haze of preparation and pain management. Dom worked miracles keeping Lena functional. Ice therapy, heat therapy, more injections, exercises designed to maintain mobility without causing additional damage. Marco made calls, coordinated security, planned for every contingency he could imagine, and several he probably couldn't. Around 5 p.m., Sal arrived with news that made everyone in the room go silent. Victor's moving people into position around the arena, he reported. 20, maybe 30 armed men. They're not even trying to hide it. He's planning something big. He's planning to take her the moment the fight ends, Marco said. Win or lose, she walks out of that cage into an ambush. Can we counter it? Not with the numbers he's bringing. We'd start a war in the middle of the tournament, get everyone killed, including Lena. Marco's jaw tightened. We need a different play. What kind of play? Marco looked at Lena, something calculating in his expression. What if you don't walk out of the arena after the fight? What if we extract you a different way? Through where? The building's surrounded. Not surrounded, just monitored. There's a difference. Marco pulled up building schematics on his phone. The factory has a loading dock on the north side. Mostly unused, connects to a tunnel system that runs under the industrial district. We stage a vehicle there, create a diversion after the fight, and get you out while Victor's people are looking the wrong direction. That could work, Dom said slowly, assuming she survives the fight. Assuming that, Marco agreed. But it's the best option we've got. Sal, coordinate with our people. I want the escape route secured and ready by fight time. Sal nodded, left to make arrangements. Lena sat quietly through the planning, feeling the weight of how many people were risking themselves for her survival. Marco, Dom, Sal, countless others whose names she didn't even know. They were all betting on her, investing in her comeback. And if she failed, if she died in that cage or bled out afterward, it would all be for nothing. I won't let you down, she said quietly. Marco looked at her, and in his eyes she saw fear and hope in equal measure. Just come back alive. That's all I'm asking. Win or lose, just survive. They arrived at the factory as the sun was setting, painting Chicago's skyline in shades of orange and red. The crowd outside was bigger than previous nights, overflow from an arena already packed beyond safe capacity. People wanted to witness history, the finals of the gauntlet, the fight that would crown a new champion or create a new corpse. Inside, the energy was electric and dangerous. Lena could feel it in the air, taste it on her tongue. This wasn't just another fight. This was the culmination of 3 nights of brutality, the moment when everyone's bets and investments either paid off or burned. The prep room felt smaller than before, claustrophobic. Dom worked in silence, wrapping Lena's hands with the ritualistic precision of a priest preparing communion. Marco stood by the door, watching the hallway, hand resting on the gun under his jacket. Helena's already here, Sal reported, appearing in the doorway. Been in her prep room for an hour. Hasn't made a sound, just sitting there waiting. What about Victor? Front row, center cage, same spot as every night. But this time, Sal hesitated. This time he looks different, confident, like he knows something we don't. Marco's expression darkened. He's got something planned, beyond the ambush, something else. What could be bigger than 30 armed men? I don't know, but we need to be ready for anything. The call came. 10 minutes. Dom finished wrapping Lena's hands, then did something he'd never done before. He hugged her, quick, awkward, but genuine. You're the toughest person I've ever worked with, he said quietly. Bar none. Whatever happens in that cage, you've already won by making it this far. Don't get sentimental on me now, Dom. I need you sharp. I'm always sharp. Doesn't mean I can't also be human. He released her, stepped back. Now go show that Irish bitch what Chicago fighters are made of. They walked to the cage through a corridor of deafening noise. The crowd had reached a fever pitch, thousands of voices blending into a single sustained roar. Lena kept her eyes forward, blocking out everything except the path ahead. The cage door opened. She stepped through. Helena Rourke stood in the opposite corner, still as a statue, watching Lena with those pale green eyes. Up close, she was even more intimidating than the footage suggested, all lean muscle and coiled violence, wearing her fighting shorts and sports bra like armor. The referee called them to center. Lena moved on autopilot, every step sending pain through her broken ribs, but she was beyond caring about pain now. Pain was just background noise. I know who you are, Helena said, her Irish accent thick as whiskey. Lena Cross, the ghost who came back. I respect that. Takes courage to return after running for so long. Lena said nothing, saved her breath. But courage doesn't win fights, skill does. And you're fighting with broken ribs and internal damage while I'm fresh and whole. Helena's expression didn't change. I'll make it quick. That's all the mercy I can offer. The referee stepped between them. You know the rules. Fight until someone can't continue. Touch gloves if you want. Helena extended her hand. Lena touched it briefly, feeling the calluses, the strength. They returned to their corners. Marco gripped the chain link from outside the cage. Everything you've learned, everything you've survived, it all comes down to the next few minutes. Stay smart, stay alive. And if you get the chance, take it. The bell rang. Helena came forward with the calm confidence of someone who'd never lost. Not cautious, not aggressive, just present and focused. She threw a testing jab, feeling out Lena's defense, watching for reactions. Lena slipped it, circled left, keeping distance. Her ribs screamed with every movement, but she'd learned to fight through worse. Helena adjusted, cutting off the angle, and threw a combination: jab, cross, hook. Textbook perfect, each punch placed with surgical precision. Lena defended the first two, but the hook got through, catching her on the temple and sending stars across her vision. She reset, shook her head to clear it. Helena was already moving, pressing forward, throwing more combinations. She fought like a machine, no wasted movement, every technique flowing seamlessly into the next. A body kick caught Lena in the ribs. She gasped, nearly dropped, but managed to stay upright. Helena saw the weakness, committed to it, threw another kick to the same spot. Lena caught it, grabbed Helena's leg mid-strike, and drove her elbow down onto the thigh, hitting the nerve cluster that could deaden the entire leg if struck right. Helena's expression flickered, surprise, maybe pain, and Lena pressed the advantage. She threw Helena off balance, followed with a straight right that caught her flush on the jaw. First clean shot of the fight. The crowd erupted. Helena stumbled back, more shocked than hurt, and for the first time Lena saw something new in those pale green eyes. Respect. Recognition that this wouldn't be easy. They engaged again, trading combinations that would have hospitalized normal fighters. Helena's technique was flawless, her timing perfect, but Lena had something Helena didn't: desperation. The kind that came from having nothing left to lose. A minute in, Helena caught Lena with an uppercut that lifted her off her feet. Lena crashed to the canvas, ears ringing, tasting blood. The referee moved in, but Lena waved him off, pushed herself up on trembling legs. Helena waited patiently for her to stand, showing the same professional courtesy she'd shown at the start. No showboating, no celebration, just waiting for the fight to continue. They clashed again. This time Helena took Lena down, transitioning to ground fighting with the ease of someone trained in every discipline. She moved to mount, raining down strikes, trying to finish it. But Lena had been here before, had trained for this exact scenario with Marco for 2 months. She trapped Helena's arm, bridged her hips, and reversed position with a technique that surprised them both. Now Lena was on top, and she made Helena pay for every second of it. Ground and pound, elbows and fists, targeting Helena's head with the same systematic brutality Sergei had tried to use on her ribs. Helena defended well, minimizing damage, but for the first time in the fight, she was on the defensive, reactive instead of active. The referee pulled Lena off to check Helena for consciousness. She was fine, bloodied but coherent, and the fight continued. 2 minutes in, they were both damaged. Helena's face was marked, her lips split, blood running from a cut above her eye. Lena was worse, ribs screaming, breathing labored, every movement requiring conscious effort to push through the pain. They circled each other, both spent, both knowing the next exchange might be the last. "You're good," Helena admitted, breathing hard. "Better than I expected. But I can see it in your eyes. You're running on empty. One more big exchange and you're done." "Maybe," Lena gasped. "But so are you." Helena smiled, showing blood-stained teeth. "Then let's finish this properly." They charged simultaneously, meeting in the center of the cage with everything they had left. No defense, no strategy, just pure violence. Fists flew, elbows connected, knees drove into bodies. It was chaos, brutal and beautiful, the kind of fighting that separated legends from footnotes. Lena felt something give in her ribs, another break, maybe worse. Felt blood filling her mouth from some internal injury, felt her vision tunneling as her body started shutting down from trauma and exhaustion. But she didn't stop, couldn't stop, because stopping meant losing. And losing meant Victor won, and she'd be damned if she let that happen. She caught Helena with a spinning elbow that opened a gash on her cheekbone, followed with a knee that cracked ribs. Then, in one desperate moment of perfect timing, she ducked under Helena's counterpunch and drove an uppercut directly into her solar plexus. Helena's eyes went wide. All the air left her lungs in a single explosive gasp. She tried to defend, to recover, but her body had other plans. She dropped to her knees, gasping, unable to breathe. Lena, running on nothing but will and muscle memory, followed her down. One more strike. One final elbow to the temple that put Helena face first on the canvas. The referee rushed in, checking Helena's condition. She was conscious but couldn't continue, chest heaving, still trying to catch her breath. The referee raised Lena's hand. The crowd went absolutely insane. Lena stood there, barely processing what had happened, feeling Dom and Marco rush into the cage. She'd won. Against impossible odds, with broken ribs and internal bleeding, she'd beaten the undefeated Helena Rourke. She'd won the gauntlet. The tournament official climbed into the cage with a microphone, voice booming through speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, your gauntlet champion, Lena Knockout Cross." The crowd's response was deafening. $5 million. The reputation, the status. It was all hers now. But Lena wasn't looking at the official or celebrating with Marco and Dom. She was looking at the front row, where Viktor Kozlov sat frozen, his expression transforming from confidence to something like disbelief. She'd done it. She'd taken everything he'd used to hunt her and turned it into victory. And now, standing there with blood on her hands and her enemy's face before her, Lena realized something. She didn't need to run anymore. Didn't need to hide or apologize or shrink herself to survive. She was done being afraid. But before she could savor the moment, gunfire erupted in the arena. Not celebratory shots, real gunfire, automatic weapons, the sound of a coordinated assault. The crowd panicked, stampeding for exits, turning celebration into chaos in seconds. Victor's men were moving, not toward Lena but toward the arena entrances, blocking escape routes. This was it, the bigger plan Sal had sensed. Victor wasn't just ambushing her, he was taking over the entire event. Marco grabbed Lena's arm. "We need to go. Now." They moved toward the cage door, but it was already surrounded by armed men wearing Victor's colors. Dom tried to push through, but one of them shoved him back, hard. "Nobody leaves," the gunman announced. "Not until Mr. Kozlov gets what he came for." The arena had gone silent now, thousands of people frozen in place as armed men secured positions around the perimeter. This was a hostage situation, and everyone knew it. Victor stood, climbed into the cage with the casual confidence of someone who held all the cards. His men followed, surrounding Lena, Marco, and Dom with guns drawn. "Congratulations on your victory," Victor said, his Russian accent thick with mockery. "Truly impressive. You've exceeded every expectation." He circled her slowly, a predator savoring the hunt's conclusion. "But did you really think I would let you walk out of here? That winning some tournament would erase 3 years of debt?" "The debt was always a lie," Lena said, voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Your nephew died from a brain aneurysm, not from anything I did. You used his death as an excuse to hunt me, to destroy my life, to kill Tommy. All of it was based on a lie. Truth, lies. Does it matter?" Victor shrugged. "What matters is that you took something from me. My nephew's future, my family's honor. And now I take from you." He produced a gun, black, efficient, probably illegal, and pointed it at Marco's head. "You have a choice, Lena Cross. You can die here, quick and clean, or you can watch everyone who helped you die first, slowly, while I make you witness the price of defiance. Either way, you don't leave this building alive." Lena's mind raced. She was in no condition to fight, barely able to stand without Dom's support. Marco was weaponless, surrounded. The crowd was trapped. Victor had won. Except he hadn't. Because Victor had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated what Lena had become over the last 3 months. Not just a fighter, but someone who'd learned to survive by being smarter than her opponents. And she'd learned from the best. "Before you kill us," she said, voice carrying across the silent arena, "I want you to know something. About the tournament. About who really runs it." Victor's expression flickered. "What are you talking about?" "The Gauntlet isn't independent. It's owned by a coalition of Chicago's major players. Crime families, legitimate businesses, all working together to keep it running smoothly." Lena looked directly at him. "And one of those major players is standing right here. She gestured to Marco. Marco Vieri owns a 40% stake in this tournament, she continued, which means by holding everyone hostage, by threatening violence in this arena, you're not just attacking me. You're attacking every organization that has money invested in tonight's event, every crime lord in this building, every powerful person who came to watch. Victor's face paled slightly as the implications sank in. You didn't think about that, did you? Lena pressed. You were so focused on revenge that you forgot the basic rules of this world. You don't shit where you eat. You don't turn a neutral ground into a war zone. And you definitely don't threaten the financial interests of people more powerful than you. Around the arena, Lena saw movement. Other crime lords standing up, their own security details moving into position. Victor's men were outnumbered 5-1. They just hadn't realized it yet. A voice called out from the stands. Kozlov, you have 30 seconds to leave this building before we consider you a threat to be eliminated. Another voice from a different section. Attacking the gauntlet attacks all of us. You've crossed a line. Victor looked around, finally understanding the trap he'd walked into. His men shifted nervously, realizing they were surrounded by heavily armed opposition that had been there all along, just waiting for an excuse. This isn't over, Victor snarled at Lena. But his gun lowered, and his men began backing toward the exits. Actually, Marco said, stepping forward, it is. He pulled out his phone, played an audio recording. Victor's voice filled the arena through the speaker system. Doesn't matter if she wins. I'll take her in the chaos after. Kill everyone who helped her. Make an example that will last decades. It was from a phone call Victor had made earlier, not realizing Marco's people had tapped his communications. That's conspiracy to commit mass murder, Marco announced. Recorded, witnessed by everyone here, which means your business in Chicago is done. Your connections, your operations, your protection, all of it ends tonight. Victor's face transformed into something ugly and desperate. He raised his gun again, pointing it at Lena. But before he could fire, someone tackled him from behind. Helena Rourke, still bloodied from their fight, had somehow made it into the cage and taken Victor down with a precision tackle that sent his gun skittering across the canvas. I may have lost the fight, Helena said, voice rough, but I'll be damned if I let some coward with a gun ruin what we built in that ring. Victor struggled, but Helena had him in a hold that wasn't going anywhere. His men tried to intervene, but found themselves staring down the barrels of 100 guns from 100 different directions. Marco made a gesture. His security detail moved in, took custody of Victor from Helena, and began restraining him with zip ties. You have a choice now, Marco told Victor. We can turn you over to the authorities with that recording. You'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison, and your organization will be dismantled by people who've been waiting for an excuse. Or, he paused, you can leave Chicago, tonight, forever. Disband your operations, disappear into whatever hole you crawled out of, and never speak Lena's name again. If you do that, we let you go. One-time offer. Victor looked at Lena, and in his eyes she saw the moment he broke. The moment he realized he'd lost everything. His revenge, his power, his future. All because he'd underestimated a woman he'd spent 3 years hunting. I'll go, he whispered, louder, so everyone can hear. I'll leave Chicago, Victor shouted. Tonight. I'm done. The bounty on Lena Cross is void. It's over. Marco nodded. Get him out of here. Make sure he's on a plane within the hour. And if he ever sets foot in this city again, kill him on sight. Victor's men released him. He stumbled toward the cage exit, defeated and humiliated, while the crowd watched in silence. At the door he paused, looked back at Lena one final time. You should have stayed hidden, he said. No, Lena replied. I really shouldn't have. Victor left, his men trailing behind him. And just like that, the 3-year nightmare ended. Not with violence or death, but with the complete and total destruction of everything he'd built. The arena remained tense for another minute, everyone waiting to see if the situation would escalate. But slowly, gradually, the armed men began standing down. The crisis had passed. The tournament official climbed back into the cage, microphone in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, your champion, Lena Knockout Cross. This time, the crowd's response was genuine celebration. Lena had won twice tonight, once in the cage, once outside it, and everyone knew they'd witnessed something rare and precious. A fighter who'd come back from nothing and claimed everything. Dom caught Lena as her legs finally gave out. That's enough heroics for one night. Hospital, now. No arguments this time, she agreed. They got her out through the north loading dock, exactly as Marco had planned, into a waiting ambulance. Helena actually walked with them, insisted on it despite her own injuries. You're something special, Helena said as paramedics loaded Lena into the ambulance. I've fought 100 opponents. You're the first one who made me think I might lose. Respect for that. The feeling's mutual. Next time we fight, I won't hold back. Neither will I. Helena smiled, genuine warmth in her eyes. Looking forward to it. She turned to Marco. Take care of her. She's worth protecting. I know. The ambulance doors closed, and they rushed Lena to the nearest trauma center. She'd live, the paramedics assured everyone, but she'd need surgery to repair the internal damage and set the broken ribs properly. Marco rode with her, holding her hand the entire way. You did it, he said quietly. Everything you set out to do. Victor's gone. You're the champion. You're free. We did it, Lena corrected. You, Dom, Sal, even Helena. I couldn't have done any of this alone. Maybe. But you're the one who stepped into that cage 3 times with injuries that should have killed you. You're the one who faced your demons and won. Don't diminish that. Lena closed her eyes, feeling the ambulance's motion, the sirens wailing, Marco's hand warm in hers. 3 years ago, she'd lost everything. Tonight, she'd taken it all back and then some. The surgery took 6 hours. They repaired internal bleeding, set ribs, addressed trauma that the doctors said should have been fatal. When Lena woke up in recovery, Marco was there, asleep in a chair beside her bed. She watched him for a moment, this dangerous man who'd chosen to invest in her comeback, who'd given her the platform to reclaim her life. You're staring, Marco said without opening his eyes. You're awake. Have been for a while, just resting my eyes. He sat up, stretched. How do you feel? Like I fought 3 death matches in 3 days with broken ribs and won. So, pretty good all things considered? Pretty good, she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that only exists between people who've survived something terrible together. What happens now? Lena asked eventually. Now? Now you heal. Take a month, maybe 2. Let your body recover properly for the first time in years. Marco stood, moved to the window overlooking Chicago. After that, whatever you want. You've got $5 million coming, more money than you could spend in a lifetime. You could retire, invest it, live quietly somewhere far from here. Is that what you think I should do? I think you should do whatever makes you happy. For the first time in 3 years, you actually have that choice. Lena considered this. A month ago, she'd been a waitress. Invisible, forgettable, hiding from a past that hunted her. Now she was a champion, free from Victor's threat, financially secure. The world was open to her in ways it hadn't been since before Tommy died. I want to fight again, she said. Marco turned from the window. Professionally? Maybe. Or maybe just in underground circuits where people remember what fighting used to be about, before it became too commercial, too safe. She met his eyes. I spent 3 years running from violence. These last 3 months taught me that violence isn't the problem. It's what I do with it that matters. And what do you want to do with it? Build something, a gym, maybe. A place where people like me, people running from their pasts, hiding from their potential, can come and learn to fight back, to reclaim themselves the way I did. Marco smiled. That sounds perfect. And I know just the property. Old warehouse on the south side, been sitting empty for years. We could convert it, make it into exactly what you're describing. We? If you'll have me, as a partner, silent investor, facility manager, whatever you need. He returned to her bedside. You changed my life, Lena. Gave me something to believe in again. I'd like to help you build whatever comes next. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. I'd like that too. Over the next month, Lena healed. Slowly, painfully, but completely. Dom monitored her recovery with the same clinical precision he'd used to keep her fighting, and gradually her body knit itself back together. Victor kept his word. He left Chicago and never returned. His organization collapsed without him, absorbed by competitors or dissolved entirely. The bounty on Lena's head was publicly voided, announced in every underground channel that mattered. She was free. Actually, truly free. Helena visited twice during Lena's recovery, bringing flowers the first time and a challenge the second. "When you're healed," she said, "we fight again, properly. No tournament pressure, no external stakes. Just two fighters testing each other. What do you say?" I say yes. Absolutely. They shook on it, mutual respect transforming into something like friendship. 6 weeks after the gauntlet, Lena stood outside the warehouse Marco had purchased. It was rough, needed work, but she could see the potential. The space where rings would go, the area for bags and weights, the office where she could counsel fighters who came to her the way she'd once gone to Tommy. "What do you think?" Marco asked, standing beside her. "I think it's perfect." Lena looked at him, at Dom standing nearby with his medical bag, at the future spreading out before her like an open road. "I think we're going to build something that lasts." 3 months after that, Cross Combat Gym opened its doors. The grand opening drew fighters from across the country, some legitimate, some underground, all curious about the woman who'd disappeared and returned as a champion. Helena came, of course, and they sparred in the main ring while a crowd watched and cheered. Dimitri sent flowers with a note. "No hard feelings. You won fair. Respect." Even some of Victor's former associates showed up, looking for fresh starts away from his collapsed empire. Lena stood in the center of her gym, surrounded by the controlled chaos of fighters training, and felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Home. Not the place. The purpose. The knowledge that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Marco found her there, watching her students with obvious pride. "You did it," he said. "Built something real, something that matters." "We did it," she corrected, "and we're just getting started." That night, after everyone had left and the gym was quiet, Lena sat alone in the ring. She pulled out the photograph of Tommy from her bag, the one she'd kept on her nightstand during the darkest days. "I made it," she told the image. "Through everything, I made it. And I'm going to make sure no one else has to run the way I did. I'm going to give them the tools to fight back, to reclaim themselves, the way you taught me." She set the photo on the ring post, a permanent fixture, Tommy's ghost watching over the space. Then Lena Cross, former ghost, current champion, stood in her ring and shadowboxed until the sun came up. Not training for a fight, not preparing for danger, just moving, just existing, just being exactly who she'd fought so hard to become. The waitress was gone. The fighter remained. And this time, she wasn't hiding anymore. She was home.